Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. And yes, if you are watching on YouTube, we are doing that split thing. I've some important diddly deeing to do on Monday night, so we're trying to get it through. Dave, it's that time of year where there's loads of midweek games
Oh, I know, yeah.
and all that to try and keep on top of. Shall we touch on the one that we don't normally do, the Newcastle game? I had one eye on that when I
All
was in
right.
Manchester
Um,
on Tuesday night. It was one of those where actually, I think if you said to me before the game -3. I would have thought that was a really good result, but then the way they started the game, the lead they got, I was wondering whether it still was by the end of the game.
I think it was because I think they bought themselves some time in the first half, to be frank. I think that was always going to happen. Since Okoro went down, Newcastle have scored 68, 68, 67, and in this game, I think 82, but of the 82 or 83 they scored in this game, 51 came in the first half. So
Yeah,
they did one efficient half in eight, and happily that was the half that perhaps not coincidentally was probably the game that they'd been focused on.
yeah,
I thought their legs got I think they got tired, but they just made enough shots to kind of survive. I mean, they were giving up a size disadvantage without their passion and an athleticism disadvantage without a Coro, but they still had back and only played seven players as well. So it wasn't that they got outrun by a deeper squad, but they played 3 games in 5 days. So
yeah.
um, I think they just about made enough plays to kind of survive that game, I thought.
Mm, mm.
Um, and it made for a good game on Tuesday night.
Yeah, yeah.
And hopefully Okoro's back. But I wasn't planning on talking about it because we haven't talked about them. But no, remember 5 years ago we were all talking about back in Bears. Wow,
Yeah,
what
yeah, yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah,
they went
yeah,
they beat Vince's team by 30 in pre-season.
yeah,
In the
yeah, yeah,
pre-season, you're thinking, man, if only we could get to the level of one of these programs, blah blah
yeah.
blah. Well, you've seen what Bristol have played them tight,
Mm,
and now Newcastle have played them 3 times in a year. And
mm,
the first last year two, it was overtime in the second leg, and this year it's
yeah.
basically a one-shot game. So that gap has substantially closed. In fact, there probably isn't a gap anymore.
Mm,
Um, and that's relevant because Bacon's budget will be about 1 million, and
mm,
Newcastle's budget and most of the SLB budgets will be about half that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
less than that. So we do remain punching above our weight. Obviously, it's still a long, long way away from Euro Cup and all the guys we
Yeah,
sort of look
yeah,
at.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I'm not over egging it in that way. Um, but as a measuring stick, it's pretty useful, I think.
yeah, 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 yeah,
That's the biggest thing. And obviously, it's my team, and I've enjoyed the games in the way they played. I think both with Bristol and Newcastle, it's had an impact on them.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I do think that's probably undeniable now, and it would be easier for probably some of the slightly better resource teams to be in it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and carry things through. And I think if the kind of the Hitler-esque fighting on kind of Eastern Front and Western Front is eventually caught up with them.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just watching a clip of JD Vance this morning. I don't know why that came to me. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was good. No, I was happy. It set up a decent game.
Yeah, all to play for.
And
That was the important thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
Get
set
it
up a
to the
decent
point where
game.
you've got a chance at home, and they have,
Yeah.
so that's good. Let's revert to the normal fare of SLB. Tuesday night, Manchester basketball 100, Leicester Riders 93. Still no KO for Manchester. Threes at both ends. Thompson going to work inside for Leicester. Manchester continuing that intensity on defense that we've seen of recent weeks. Mitchell and John hitting threes. They had a 12-1 run late in the first quarter to lead 33-17, Manchester.
I love the phrase intensity, but basically it comes down to effort, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Instead of trying
Try a
harder.
bit harder.
That sounds a bit brutal, but you can't be what they were and what they are now, and not say, come on, you guys, what's going on? That said, there is a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit of the sugar rush about it
Mm,
all with them.
mm,
The new coach has clearly figured out that's what they needed to do, and
mm.
and he's on the sideline. He's hyping them up, and Ashton Langford's flying all over the court, and they're all there. But I say the sugar rush is there. It's a little bit there's a little bit of deception, there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors in there as
Mm,
well because they're still making some of the same mistakes. They're just hidden better.
mm.
Um, the Madut seems to have gone. I'm assuming Madut has
Yeah,
left,
he's gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
he's
no
gone.
one's ever announced that. But
They
I'll be,
did. No, they did
did
announce
they?
that. Yeah,
Did they
yeah, they
announce
did.
that?
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
missed that. And that there you go. There's my ex-free
Mm.
existence, resulting in some lack of journalistic scruples in this show. Sorry. What will I do? I'll survive. I suppose I'll not be turned Nazi. Anyway, so yeah, so my dud's gone. So they haven't replaced him. So I'm assuming that they tried to replace him. Goodness knows what's going on there.
Mm,
Because we've only got the five imports, I think, at the moment, and they're not short of resources to get another one or two. Um, so yeah, and then I mean, Thompson just destroyed everybody in this game. I mean,
mm,
I remember about 2 weeks ago, I said, 3 weeks ago, kind of a Coro's 40-point game was kind of an MVP style game
mm.
against Caledonia. Well, this was Thompson's MVP style game,
Yeah, yeah.
because he just, they gave him the ball inside. I'm not sure how much longer Mandalay is going to be able to remain the encouraging, happy, clappy, smiley person with effigy, I'm
Yeah,
afraid.
yeah, yeah.
He's just, his fouling is now so senseless.
Mm,
They're not good fouls, they're bad fouls.
yeah. 7
And
fouls per 40 minutes.
and it's just bad fouls. They're not, you can get away with playing hard and getting fouls and
Mm,
that's part of your game, but it's the ones he gets which are just killing the coach,
mm,
killing everybody. And it's tough. I mean, he has to keep him going, try and teach him, try and improve. But I think Jason said on commentary, at some point in time,
mm,
the the penny's got to drop.
mm,
You have to understand that this can't keep happening. And Thompson basically systematically fouled out the front line of
mm,
of Manchester. But the one issue Leicester have had this year, the only teams that they've struggled to beat are teams that have had very, very talented individuals.
mm.
That's it. We talked about it last week. Sheffield times two, Newcastle one when Okoro went off, and
London.
London.
Yeah.
And now Manchester, who are in that category,
Mm,
where their system can't quite their defense and not fouling and all the discipline can't quite save them from people just making plays.
yeah.
And that's what kind of happened in this game. They made a lot of plays, um, and I say Manchester didn't play nothing like a perfect game, but they played just about well enough to get through.
Yeah. Lead peaked at 20 early in the second quarter. Shelton and Jackson spearheaded a 17-2 run as Leicester cut the gap to 43-39. That was kind of the pattern of the game. Went out to 10 early in the third quarter. Leicester had it back down to 2. Manchester build the lead. Leicester would get back but not get in front. And it looked like Manchester were going to see it home. They were 81-65 ahead with 7
Just
to...
at
Yeah.
this point, yeah, absolutely they were. And this is the point I wanted to take up. They were 81-65, and they built that lead on the back of playing without a centre.
Mm,
They built that league on playing without playing Mitchell at the five,
mm,
right? And for no FJ, no Delpesh, no Irvin. Irvin might have been, I don't think Irvin was on the court either.
mm,
So Mitchell's at the five. And Leicester couldn't handle that. And the reason Leicester struggled to handle that defensively is it's all about Thompson. The whole, with Leicester, everything is about Thompson. I mean, in relation to how you play against them, because he is a guy you have to game plan for. And usually you have to game plan for him at the defensive, your offensive end of the
mm.
court. And you've talked about this a bit as well, about not attacking him. But so no, most teams in the league are
And
running.
yet Manchester did attack him, which is why he had 6 blocks.
They did, yeah, they did.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's why I say Manchester did not play the
yeah,
perfect
yeah,
game.
yeah.
But when Manchester attacked him, because Manchester were used to just doing what they normally do when the bigs are in the game,
Mm,
which is Ashton Langford's going to get a high ball screen, and if Effigy is the guy who sets that ball screen, then or Delpesh, then they're going to be guarded by Thompson, unless they're going to switch it.
mm,
Right, so because they're comfortable with Thompson guarding the ball, and they're also comfortable that his wingspan is so great. It's very difficult to throw the ball inside
mm,
to the little guy on the mismatch, to the big guy on the mismatch. And neither Effigy or Del Petro are particularly dominant post-up players anyway, who you look to get the ball to. So Mandelay's adjustment to this, primarily caused by foul trouble, but also maybe because he realized it was the right thing to do, was right. Okay, we're going to take those two big guys out of the game, which means that it's effectively what we call five out.
mm,
And Mitchell is about the most dangerous stretch five you're going to find in the history SLB.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he's also got enough size whereby he can just about match up at the other end. 6'8", he blocks shots on the weak side occasionally, all that stuff. And the reason it matters is because now anybody can set the screen,
Mm,
right? Now, if FJ is in the game, then either FJ sets the screen or FJ is in the way.
mm,
If FJ, you say, oh, well, okay, we'll space FJ out, we'll go and stand him in the corner. Okay, so Thompson has to go out there and guard him. But Thompson doesn't have to go out there and guard him. Thompson just has to stay in the lane. So that clogs it in even more. Okay, so when FJ is in the game or Delpesh in the game, Thompson is in all the actions. When Mitchell is in the game, it doesn't have to be um, Thompson. So if whoever Thompson is guarding is a shooter, can go can go and stand out in the corner, and Thompson has to stay out of the way. He
mm,
can't get involved in the play, which means that you get to attack Johnson or Hunter's pretty solid, but Johnson or Abercrombie or whoever on the perimeter, and that's what broke the game open.
mm,
And then what nearly gave them the game back was Mitchell committing two ridiculous fouls.
mm,
The fourth foul he committed was, I think, on the perimeter, 30 feet away, reaching in on the screen, which meant that Effigy had to come back in, and suddenly Thompson's back in the game again, and
mm.
and that's the game that Leicester want to play. So foul trouble is going to kill Manchester. I'm putting my Nostradamus stuff on here. It is going to kill them. It's killing them already,
Yeah, yeah,
but they're surviving it.
yeah, yeah.
Eventually, it is going to absolutely destroy them. And it's not the foul, not to say people fouling out. It's giving up shots in the penalty. It's giving up 2 3 points time and time again. At the end of quarters when you can't afford to do so, and that then resulted in Leicester coming right back in the game and having a shot at it because I think it was about it was a 3 point game in about 3 minutes, wasn't it?
1 point game. So Jackson had 13 points in a 17-2 run in 4.5 minutes that cut it from 81-65 to 83-82. Manchester's foul trouble, as you said, caught up with them at that point. At the end of that run, Afeje fouls out with 3.5 minutes to go, trying for an offensive rebound. And then Mitchell, complaining to the referee about that call, gets a technical. And you've got two players fouling out on the same play, which I can't remember ever seeing before.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, again, just kind of, yeah, where do you want me to shoot myself first? The head of Um, again, it's the one flaw he's got to sort out.
Mm,
I don't care whether it was a foul, whether it wasn't, whether you like the call, whether you don't like the call. You have to have more discipline. Of course, a lot of it is frustration because when Mitchell's gone out of the game with that silly four foul, they're up
yeah,
16. When he
yeah,
comes
yeah,
in, they're up 3. So he's
yeah.
now thinking, my goodness, how are we going to lose? So his head's kind of spinning as well. Um, and just to be clear, why do, the question was if someone might say, well, if that works for playing against Leicester and getting Thompson out of the way, why doesn't everybody do it? One, no, you got to be able to guard down low as
Mm,
well. If you go 5 small guys, then someone's going to have to rebound the ball defensively, and that's a bit difficult to do when Thompson's cleaning the glass.
yeah, yeah.
You're going to get destroyed inside. So it's a
The
very much,
reality is Thompson had his best career numbers in SLB. I know it's a
yeah.
small sample size, but for points, for blocks, and he was up there for rebounds as well.
So it is a kind of very much a pick your poison
Mm,
situation. You have to have the absolute right personnel, but it's probably the easiest way because if you can neutralize Thompson, you have a better chance of neutralizing Leicester.
mm.
Um, yeah, and then Ashton Langford kind of took over, didn't he? Just
Yeah, yeah,
I think Tom and Jackson got a bit tired. To be fair,
yeah.
Jackson
Jackson
got a lot
did
heavy,
like it
didn't
wore down a bit. Leicester again couldn't quite get in front. It was Ashton Langford three with 34 seconds to go from miles out. That was basically the dagger shot.
he? Yeah, I mean that was a. I don't think I think that was just a basketball player making a play.
Mm, mm,
I don't see anything that Leicester really could have done differently. Once you get out to logo distance.
mm.
Then you maybe want to have a hand up, but in reality, if he
But it
makes
was Thompson on him, so he's
it was
got to give a
Thompson on
step
him,
because of the
yeah,
speed.
and at that point, what you'll say is that Ashton Langford realised, well, it's me.
Yeah.
He produced kind of one of those I'm not going to lose games, and he's getting there with that mentality. He's getting there a little bit with it, whereby whether Manchester's finally beginning to get a bit of a pecking order and it involves Ashton Langford with the ball when it matters. John is coming in to score the ball. A lot more consistency than was in the beginning of the season when he was playing one game, wasn't playing the other game, and they probably benefited from Kyle being out because it's given them a little bit of raw definition,
Mm,
not as much moving around. So they'll have to integrate him when he comes back. But they're really talented. I mean, they should be a lot. The record should be a lot better than it is,
mm,
and it probably will continue to improve. subject, but to get to that next level and basically they're playoffs, they have to
Yeah,
be more disciplined.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
discipline. They can't keep making the same. They can't play on sugar rushes.
Mm. Mitchell, 24 points, 5 assists, 5 of 10 from 3 point range. Ashton Langford, 22 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists. John, 7 of 10 shooting for 20 points. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Thompson, 12 of 16 from the floor, 26 points, 14 rebounds, 6 blocks. Jackson, 23 points and 8 rebounds, and Johnson had 14.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
sorry. I think in this game, it might have been this game, maybe the other game. It was the first mouthed "unbelievable" from Coach Mandalay on the sideline. After I think a call at the beginning of the third quarter, we got
uh,
maybe it might be in the other game they played.
uh,
After the call at the beginning of the third quarter was someone missed the shot clock or something. I can't remember what it was. The rest missed something,
mm,
something quite straightforward, and you could hear him say "unbelievable." As he, I thought myself, so we've had one screen and one unbelievable already.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't like the way that your directors kind of focus on coaches a lot at times when the game's going on, but yeah, I'll make exception for Coach Mandalay. I'm interested.
Let's go to
Fascinated
Wednesday
by him.
night. Sheffield Sharks 101, Cheshire Phoenix 82. So an 11th consecutive victory for Sheffield, which is Atiba Lyon's best winning run for Sheffield. McGill and Clay scoring for the Sharks. Nixon's hitting threes, not a lot in the first quarter, but free scoring as it always seems to be when Cheshire
Yeah, you
are
just may as well
playing.
start the second half of
Yeah,
51 and just crack on with it, mightn't you?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, it was obviously you got the cup final hangover for Sheffield. You got all the hoopla and the trophy presentation, all that stuff. It always left me very, very uneasy
Mm,
as a coach, just sitting there thinking, "Oh, I don't want any of this,"
mm,
just miserable, misery, misery guts, just thinking about the next game as opposed to, this, that, or the other, uh, glorifying and celebrating what you've done. It's like, that we can do that on Sunday night. We'll do that,
mm,
the Cheshire Vase situation, everything. I just never liked it.
mm,
And so you're always a little bit on edge. Cheshire was probably the best team and the worst team for Sheffield to play against in those circumstances.
mm,
The best team because they were going to be able to score the ball. The worst team was because if you're not actually on it, right at the beginning, one long run, 15 point run can be like whatever. They're just so spiritable, you're not going to grind them down. But they kind of did grind them down, and Cheshire, I thought, cracked a little bit in the second half. I can't really remember anything of the first half, other than the fact that it
So
was down.
Holden has got Grayson hit some threes. There was a 12-1 run by Cheshire. They led 32-42. Knicks were up 10 after the first score of the third quarter. Sheffield then with a 12-1 run to lead 56-55. Nixon had 7 of them.
That's
Uh,
right. I
yeah,
remember it now. Sorry. Firstly, Skylar made some shots in this game. Dear
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. I mean, we are beginning to underestimate. I think it's probably a little bit of an underestimation as to his not just ability to knock down threes, but his ability to knock down difficult threes.
Mm,
It's really quite impressive. And I thought this was two different games when he was playing and when he wasn't playing because
mm,
defensively they had a little bit of protection. They had a body at the rim when he was in the game and they didn't when he wasn't. But I thought for the first time this season, Cheshire kind of went against their identity in the second half a little bit. The the starting lineup, it was I think Ulf started, and in the third quarter White didn't start, and there was another maybe Scott Grayson started, somebody else started as well. But what it was more of a matchup with Sheffield, and it kind of slowed Cheshire down. And then Timberlake played I think about 3 minutes. He came out. He didn't basically see the court again until probably the middle of the fourth quarter. And the kind of the giveaway that Cheshire weren't quite sure on how they were going to kind of finish this game was when Sheffield basically gave Holden two wide open 3 point shots,
mm,
probably end of the third quarter maybe.
mm,
And I'm talking about wide open. I'm saying Clay stood there, in the paint as Holden shoots it. And I think one was a bad miss, one was an air ball. And at that point, Holden came out.
mm,
Ben said now Cam Holden was 2 of 5 at that point from three, so it wasn't that he was shooting it badly, but they had no confidence in him to knock down that shot. And I don't think he came back. I think Larry Austin came back, came in for a while, um, and I just thought they got stuck. between playing their game and playing a normal game.
Mm,
And they weren't going to beat Sheffield playing a normal game. A normal meaning kind of bats match up size for size,
mm,
make plays. TJ Atwood, who was kind of basically their most normal basketball player, he kind of, he gets to his spots, he's methodical, he does what he does. He didn't score a point in this game, he was minus 20 or something like
mm.
that,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that's yeah, he didn't have the best game. That happened. He missed shots, all that type of stuff. He still had his 21 minutes. And in those minutes, I didn't think they were great. Whereas when Skylar's in the game and they're playing their five out and they're running a little bit, I think maybe an up when Skylar was in this game, or very
Mm,
close to it. His plus minus was very good. And and when Cam Holden comes out and basically he's done for the game then, and then Timberlake's basically been out most of the second half, and when he comes in, jacks up a couple of bad shots because he hasn't touched the ball much. At that point, their offense dries up, and if they score 30 odd points in a quarter, in a half, they're not going to win the game.
yeah. So from the final score of the third quarter, Sheffield scored 15 without reply. Groves 5, Reece 5, and led 77-68, and that kind of broke the back of the game.
It did, I mean, I'm going to talk more about Sheffield about after the Saturday game, not just because they lost on Saturday, but because of but they showed real signs in this game. Their bench in particular was really good in this game, and the bench has been, they haven't had the whole bench together. Reece has just come in, Groves has been injured. Um, Ocherobia played in this game, played okay. Um, And that's kind of been, we talk about three-headed monster, but the bench has been the thing about what's going to happen when, in those depth, in those kind of 5 minute spells at the beginning of the second quarter where they don't score, that type of
Mm,
stuff. And, that game on the back of the final, where they showed some defensive teeth in both of those games in the second half, kind of made you kind of optimistic for them.
mm,
I wasn't fully on the wagon, but I was getting there.
mm,
And then Saturday happened.
mm.
I'll talk about that later.
Reece, 6 of 10 shooting, 20 points, 5 assists. Clay, 18.7 rebounds. McGill, 16 points and 8 rebounds. Scott Grayson was 10 of 19 for 25.7 rebounds. White, 5 of 7 from 3 for 15 points. And Holden, 12. Let's go to Friday. London Lions 90, Cheshire Phoenix 70. Schedule not kind on Cheshire going away to
78, I think.
78. What did I say?
70.
Oh, 70, yeah. 90 to 78. Yeah, going away to second and then away to first within a couple of days is probably not how you would
Yeah, I
draw
think
it up.
there used to be a league rule that you could only play two away games in 3 days, like once a season or twice a season or
Mm.
something like that, to try and make sure I didn't have more often, that much. But they're not the worst away games. Cheshire, well, London's not great for Cheshire, but Sheffield's not that bad, is it?
No, no, no. London going inside, Hadzabegovic and Dallaire getting most of the points, but they're only up a score or two in the early stages.
Well, Larry Austin, wouldn't he? I mean, Larry Austin just got to the rim at will. I mean, Bozic isn't going to go under a screen for anybody, and he's not going to go under it for Harry Austin. And I thought that was just an absolutely archetypal Larry game. He just utterly relentless, and they couldn't find a way of getting a handle on him. And that London's strength is their size and their length, and that's what wears teams down. But there are some little vulnerabilities in there, and I thought Austin really exploited them with his athleticism. They don't really have an athletic guard, London. You wouldn't say Peterson, you say Peterson and Holloway have size. Brisker has obviously quickness and shooting, but they don't really have an athletic guard. So he's previously used forwards to guard people like that. But I don't, and also on top of that, Austin's playing against Rye and beg your pardon, not Austin and Rye. He didn't play with Rye last year, my
No,
fault.
I didn't know.
That was the next. That was Holden. Holden played with Rye last year, so there was a bit of aggro at the end with Holden and Rye. But I just thought, Austin was awesome. He kept them in. He kept them in the basketball game. He got cheap ones. And Scott Grayson is also somebody who can exploit London's lack of athleticism on the perimeter,
Mm,
which is probably their one weakness,
mm.
particularly without Adebayo. Adebayo is their kind of defensive stopper, the athletic defensive perimeter stopper. He's not been playing. That's
Cheshire with a
improvement.
14-2 spell in the second quarter to take it from 22-22 to 24-36, but London had it back down to 2 by halftime. And to be honest with you, they got up sort of 5 or 6 in the second half, and it felt like they were in control, but they never got away. And it wasn't actually until the last couple of minutes that they sealed the win.
Yeah, it did feel like they're in control because of their size, and also it feels in control because he's playing his starters a lot more.
Mm,
That bench is obviously Adebayo's not there, Soko wasn't there, so he's got less people to worry about. Sandy struggled in this game. So that's basically having some of his better players being on the floor more.
mm,
And you didn't see a situation with Brisker and Rye and Peterson in that game where they were going to lose. Yeah, when the bench is in the game, it's not nowhere near as secure. He's down with kind of when you get down to Sandy and Goodwin, you might get games, you might get something out of them, but you might not as well.
mm,
And Holloway's obviously new. Um, but with the starting five is pretty solid.
mm,
You got a 6'9" guy like Delay who can get to the rim at will. You got the centre Begovic is now, probably shown why he's a Euro Cup centre last year. He's
mm,
probably the best centre in the league at this point in time. He's um, just with his rim running, his size, his length. He missed a couple of dunks in this game, I think, when it mattered. But even so, he's really something you've got to look at and think, has anybody else in the league got one of them?
mm,
Probably not, you know. Um, and then Rye is still one of the top three players in the league,
mm.
and when it matters, Rye's record in basketball in this country, his win and loss record is
Yeah,
probably unsurpassable. I mean,
yeah.
you can go into stats. I mean, I don't know, playing for Hemel probably 43-0 they were in the season he played in NBL
Mm,
one. So
mm.
he should be 43-0 with the level of player he is in that league, but still 43-0. And then
Yeah.
Cheshire, London, he hasn't lost many games,
No, he hasn't. No, no.
and but that it struggles. They did a little bit better job with Austin in the second half. He wore down a little bit, um, and then and Holden struggles against their size. You can't bully them, and I think Holden got frustrated in this game at the end. Timberlake is kind of in and out. The balance in Timberlake and Idle Rock at the moment. Timberlake there was a couple of moments in this game. I think there was what they were up by 12 in the second quarter. I'm remembering this now, and when they were up 12, and I think Timberlake either missed a layup or didn't get a pass or didn't get a foul, didn't get a foul call on a layup, and didn't run back.
Yeah, yeah, I remember
If you
it.
saw that, it
Yeah,
didn't
I
run
did.
back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it stands out because you can't be like that against London.
Mm,
You can't be like that against London because you got to play every play, but also because that what it says to the rest of the team.
mm.
It gives a coach a problem he does not need.
No.
The coach should not be shouting at a player, you have to run back. It's an absolute given, you know. You don't stop until you can get whinge as much as you want when the ball's dead, but you don't stop. So it gives Ben a problem because he's got how's that looking to the rest of the team? And then even the next play, I think Skylar didn't get a call, and Skylar was caught out defensively. Maybe he may have been complaining a little bit, but they got a run to the rim as well because he wasn't. He was focused on something else, and it was like those little things. And then at the end of the third quarter, and I apologize if I'm getting my games mixed up here. I think there was two or three ridiculous fouls, which put London on the line.
Mm,
Maybe Scott Grayson in the penalty, reaching round from behind on the halfway line. Holding another one, 60 feet from the basket or 40 feet from the basket. Cheap fouls that you can't give away to give 3 points to good teams.
mm, mm,
We used to have a big thing about that. There was some great foul when I was around. There was some great foul shooters in the league,
mm.
and you would see particularly ones who come off the bench, who would come off the bench 4 minutes to go in the quarter. Most recently, that would have been Kimball McKenzie. I wasn't around for him, but
Yeah,
there
yeah,
were other guys like that who would come off the bench, and they would other teams in the penalty, and they would foul hunt, they would foul punt,
yeah,
and they would do it, and they'd be successful. And the biggest thing, it was so no. I mean, BJ Holmes was a great one at Sheffield. I remember.
yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
was brilliant at it. Getting to the line at the end of the. And it was a massive point of emphasis for us when we guarding BJ Holmes. You do not foul him, particularly when we're in the penalty, because he was a 92% foul shooter. It's three
Mm,
points.
mm,
And it allows them to tick over stuff where they're not getting any offense. So you can't get any defensive rhythm. and they just struggle to put 4 quarters of defense together. Leicester, London continue to win by 12 when they're not playing great.
Yeah. It
It's,
didn't
it's
look like it was going to be a 12-point game. They were only 4 up with 5 minutes to go, but they scored
yeah.
12 of the next 14 points to make the final score feel a bit more comfortable than it had looked throughout.
They have a defensive switch, I think.
Mm,
And I think Cheshire scored maybe made one field goal in the last 7 minutes.
mm.
Um, and
And that
is that
was in the
because
last minute.
that was the last minute? Is that because of their defense, or is that because of London's defense or Cheshire's offense? Probably a little bit of both.
Mm,
I think. Um, I think Cheshire do tire a little bit defensively. They seem to commit more fouls in the second half than the first half. I think they lose their discipline a little bit. But that's little stuff like, if you don't run back
mm.
when you're in the middle of the second quarter,
Yeah.
when you're up 10, if you don't sprint back straight away, then it's very tough to get the rest of those, get to everybody to be right on that kind of page at the same time.
Mm,
Yeah, I thought Ulf was really good in this game, by the way.
mm.
I'm going to give him some props. I thought he was really good. And not just on the normal kind of Ulf stuff, just um, he finished well, he moved well, he competed. Sometimes, you look at him and you see Timberlake not running back, and you think,
Mm.
if he had a quarter of your talent, he'd be delighted. But in fact,
Yeah.
he's being more effective because he's playing the way he's meant to play, and you're not.
Mm. Begovic, 11 of 14, 24 points and 3 blocks. Delay, 19 points, 10 rebounds. Rye, 5 of 7 shooting for 15 points. Austin was 11 of 15 from the floor for 22 points.
Just,
Scott
just
Gro
sorry,
Yeah.
Dan, just on that. That's 59 points for London with Begovic, Delay, and Rye.
Mm.
Yeah, they are. Most of those points are in the paint. Whether
Yeah.
the record is being in the paint or not, I never trust the numbers that come on the stat sheet 'cause it's not easy. But I don't remember Delay making many threes. Don't remember Hadjibegic making many threes. I mean Ryan may have made one or two, but that's where the kind of the size differential really makes a difference.
Mm.
Eventually, if you get that many shots in the paint, you're big score the ball with that degree of efficiency. It's a very difficult game to lose.
Mm. Scott Grayson, 15, Holden, 10 points and 8 rebounds. Let's go to the fun in the games at the National Basketball Performance Centre. Manchester Basketball 90, Caledonia Gladiators 89. DeBose with the 3 on the first place, that tells you something about his intent. And Manchester, again, they seem to get off to good starts, don't they? 15-9
Yeah, because
after 5 minutes.
DeBose does, from my mind, from my watching the games, DeBose really hasn't made many shots since he got to
Mm,
Manchester.
mm,
Just from watching them, I haven't checked his numbers out. I might be wrong, so apologies if I am. But Um, he just really hasn't. But there's something about playing an old team or a team that snubbed you or a team that, the team that you've got a little bit more about. We've talked about it before. It's not rational. Every professional player should be up for every single game the same way, but it's not the case.
mm,
They are. And when you ask them if it's a revenge game, they'll say, no, 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 it's just another game. It's all bullshit.
mm.
They're there to send up to prove a point, they'll admit it, but they'll not admit it. So it's that type of, comical alley stuff, they're
Yeah,
going to tell you something, but we all know it's not right.
yeah, yeah,
Well, those of us who know that it's not right.
yeah.
And the other thing about the Buzz is he's basically been getting some substantial minutes. Obviously, he's got a role now in that team,
Mm,
which he didn't really have. He was bouncing around a bit with all the guards that they had. But now, they've got a rotation now of Ashton Langford, DeBose, and John, and then maybe a few spot minutes for Lewis at the
mm,
guard spot. And they're pretty set with that now, I think.
mm,
So that helps him as well. Yeah, the one thing you look at with Caledonia is you look at the roster and you think, well, actually, they've got a lot of weapons.
yeah, and they're big
Especially
as well.
and they are, I mean, it's noticeable, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it is. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely noticeable when you're there, when you see Barnes and you see Fagbenley and Malcolm and Onwas and all those guys. That is it. And even everybody apart from Ramsey, basically. Even Ventura is a solid 6'3",
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Spielman 6'6", 6'7". So there's definitely more than a 3-16 basketball team in there.
Mm,
Just a bit of a shame it took them that long to put that team with that coach together
yeah, yeah,
to the point whereby they're 3-16. I mean, any team with 6 imports and Patrick Whelan, how they're 3-16 is beyond me.
yeah, yeah.
It's just mind-boggling, really. Um, but you look at them, you think, no, this is not going to be an easy out for anybody. The difficulty they have is that they can't afford to drop games that they can win because
Yeah,
3-17, they got 12 games left. They probably got to win half of them to have a shot at the playoffs.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and therefore, every one you don't win is another one you've got to win. Um, he's still starting with his kind of long lineup with Malcolm, Fagbenle, Barnes, um, and trying to get Fagbenle's offense is still a struggle. I just hope it comes around. He's got so much about everything else about what he does, but he's a turnover machine at the moment, and it hurts them at times. Um, Ramsey's helped them because he's given them a little bit of an injection of quickness, injection of vitality, which they were kind of never really had. And he knows what he is. He knows what his game is.
mm,
But Manchester are really talented.
yeah,
It-
yeah,
and Mitchell is probably the difficult to remember a 6'8" shooter as good as Mitchell,
yeah, yeah.
if I'm being honest. And I'm talking about a guy who can play the 5 spot and the 2 spot in the same game.
Mm,
You don't get many of them around.
no,
Um, and again, without care, I think it helps them in the
yeah.
short term.
DeBose with another 7 in an 11-2
Yeah.
start to the second quarter. They were up 41-24, and Manchester seemed unable to miss. I mean, they were shooting, I think, in the
Yeah.
70s at that point and stealing the ball on every other play. It looked actually like it was going to be comfortable, but Whelan dragged Caledonia back in it. And actually, at halftime, they were going in, I think it was a 7-point game. And you think, well, actually, it felt like they got blown out in that first half.
It did, but this is the thing with Manchester's defense, as you say, that they're flying around, they're stealing the ball. Ashley Lampard's got 7 steals in 15 minutes, whatever, right? And Caledonia this season have been vulnerable to that,
Mm,
preferably when they've had different lines primarily, but they
mm,
played the game in France in the Euro Cup against a far better team where they turned it over 30 plus times
mm.
and they struggled to get the ball over half court.
And they
But
lead the league in turnovers this
lead
year.
league in turnovers, yeah. But this is the thing about, defense, oh, it's great, we're stealing the ball every time that we're getting run out. You don't get 7 steals in 15 minutes or as a player if you're not gambling a little bit,
Mm,
right? And what I mean by gambling is, reaching for ones, getting in the, over committing at times, potentially giving something up if you don't get them. And that's kind of that sugar rush comment that I made before. It's a sugar rush. You're constantly flying around. That dissipates, that wears off. At the end of the day, you have to be solid. You can get the energy. You want bursts of energy, and you want guys to come in and give you energy, and you want to play like that. But you're not going to get that 40 minutes. It's your Red Bull effect. And then what you've got to be able to do is to hunker down and actually just get stops as opposed to, flying around and getting everything you can. And
mm,
that's the difference from Manchester. They aren't quite there yet. They foul a lot. The reason they foul a lot is because they cheat a lot. They cheat a lot. Cheating doesn't mean cheating being unfair. Cheating means over overextending on a passing lane, maybe giving something up behind you, which is an obvious layup, or committing to a double team when you don't need to try and get a steal, that type of stuff. And they do a lot of that. And unfortunately, eventually that does bite you. And then shooters start shooting and Whelan starts shooting and they start getting open and then they keep playing. And suddenly the air drains out of the building a little bit.
yeah,
I thought that
yeah.
happened a little bit.
So from 2:42 to go in the second quarter to 6:30 gone in the third, Manchester didn't score a point. Caledonia had 15 consecutive points to lead 49-54. Um, Go on.
Yeah, it's just that you're not going to keep scoring on in the half court on that Caledonia team
Mm,
because they're so big.
mm.
And they do rotate in so many bodies because we've talked about those guys. We didn't talk about Hughes and Ali Hodzic,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who you're also able to come in and bump and grind and make it work. The difficulty with the size is obviously always the quickness because what wins, quickness or size.
Mm,
But they're built like a team that isn't going to give up the amount of points that Manchester were planning on scoring early on.
mm. Speaking of quickness, Ashton and Langford helped Manchester to an 8-0 run on their way to an 11-point lead with 5 minutes to go. They were still up 7 inside the final 2 minutes, and I felt in real time that Caledonia were not going quickly enough, given the situation they're in. Whelan missed a three, but they got an offensive rebound. He got a second attempt, and he made that to make it 90-86 with a minute to go.
Yeah, we've said a few times, haven't we, about not giving up threes when you're up. When you get to that point when you're up 10 or 8 with a minute and a half to go, that point whereby you as a commentator are thinking they're running out of possessions here.
Yeah.
Your mind is winding forward. The equation does not work. The math does not work.
Mm,
10 points a minute to go. Lots of things have to happen for it to work. Okay. The most thing that has to happen is you have to make threes,
mm,
right? You have to make threes. And that means, as a corollary, defensively, you cannot give up a three.
mm,
The worst loss we ever had was the one where Orland beat us on the buzzer for Cheshire, where we turned the ball over in the cup quarter final in 2017 um, at Sports Central. But that loss came about because we were up 12 with 2 minutes to go and we gave up four threes.
mm,
And Cheshire was smart enough to shoot them. There's a guy called Rob Sandoval,
mm.
who played at Leeds the year before. He was a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
strong point guard. And he made a couple of really tough plays, got offensive rebound. Our guys shut down. The only reason they got back in the game because they were shooting threes. Threes, to state the bleeding obvious, are more than two,
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
and 50% more than two. And as soon as they give that three to Whelan, you're thinking, oh, a 7 point game and a 5 point game, a 4 point game is very, very different.
Mm.
It gets a bit squeakier. And they gave it, and the worst thing about that three they gave it to Whelan was that it was a recycled three. They gave him a
Yeah, yeah.
second.
He was
And it
wide open on the first
and it's
one, and
Patrick Whelan,
yeah,
and this
yeah,
is
yeah.
where ultimately your players have to have a little bit more about them. There are guys on that Caledonia team you would prefer shooting the basketball than
Mm.
Pat Whelan.
Well,
In fact,
there's probably 11 of them that you would
11
prefer
of them, yeah.
shooting the ball than
Well,
Pat.
yeah, if you remember though, remember the game they played at Newcastle when I was there, and the last seconds of the game, Newcastle made them throw it to Barnes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
He
yeah,
missed the three. I mean, if Barnes makes a three, fantastic. Barnes is 25%.
yeah,
Whelan's historically great.
yeah,
So you have to at times play the numbers, and they didn't. And offensively, yeah, they're a little bit. Yeah, they got stuck a little bit offensively. I thought Manchester they weren't quite sure, and it's very much the Ashton Langford show at the end. I think it has to
yeah,
be.
yeah. 48.7 seconds to go. Delpesh is fouled. He misses both free throws. They come the other way. Benley has the freedom of the court. Looked to me like he didn't want to shoot it, but I think it was Ramsey was telling him to shoot it.
Yeah, well, I'm
And
not going to criticize Manchester on that one because
yeah,
he did with that shot every day of the week.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
he's made about five all season.
yeah,
But credit to him, it's a sense of development. These guys have to get better by playing, I suppose. And
yeah.
if he knocks down a shot in that situation, you might be ready to knock down that shot again. My criticism of Benley more than is his finishing around the rim.
Mm,
It's just nowhere near where it needs to be for a guy who's as athletic and good as he is,
mm,
aggressive as he is. He
mm,
just does not finish around the rim unless he is literally wide open under the rim. And that's what he has to work on his footwork around the rim because he has the length and the jumping ability where but he should be unguardable.
mm,
And and he doesn't. And they have to decide what type of player he's going to be. Is he going to be a stretch four? Is he going to be a wing who just guards everybody and blots out the sun? Is he going to be a guy who kind of stands in the corner and then cuts baseline to get catches off rolls? Is he going to be a shooter or is he going to be a finisher? I don't think he knows what he is at the moment and offensively, and I'm not sure. I think he's been messed around a bit this year because he's played a few different positions as well. But potential-wise, it's all there. It's just
mm,
that skill level has to improve.
mm. So it's 90-89 with 35.7
Yeah.
seconds to go. Mitchell then airballs a three. Benley with a hand in his face. Caledonia have the ball back. 12 seconds to go. Down one. You think they're going to steal this one on the road. Whelan gets into the screen, ends up with three Manchester players around him. And between DeBose and Irvin, they steal the ball away and run out the clock.
Yeah, how they need the timeout, how they need
Mm,
the American timeout at that
mm,
point. Um, yeah, it was slightly unfortunate with Caledonia. The game didn't stop. I give, the credit to Caledonia for their defense. And Manchester were tight by that point. Manchester were
mm,
thinking, "Oh my God, we can lose," and the Mitchell shot wasn't a great one. They didn't really find a way of getting a good look. Um, for me, Ramsey told Whelan to take the ball. Right? And Whelan, I don't think when he brought that basketball to the court, Whelan wasn't in scoring mindset. I think initially he was looking to get the ball to Ramsey, and then you've got 7 seconds left.
mm,
And Ramsey said, "No, it's you. You got the matchup." And Manchester was smart enough to realise this time that they were going to crowd him, and Manchester crowd him with their size, and he didn't. ever have any spacing. The spacing wasn't right because he was dribbling the ball to his right to start with, but Ramsey was to his right.
Mm,
So Ramsey's man is there as well. And then I think it might have been Barnes comes up to set a screen. So that means that Barnes's man is there as well.
mm,
So their spacing was never set. They were never quite where they wanted to be. And they never quite had a hierarchy on that play. I think Whelan was dribbling the basketball in the middle to look to find something. But they didn't space the floor well enough. Ramsey, fair enough, probably thought, yeah, yeah, okay, you got the ball, you go, you're our guy. But they never spaced it well enough, and Manchester made a good defensive play and got away.
mm. So DeBose ended up with 27 points, which is more than he ever scored for Caledonia.
Mhm.
10 of 12 and 5 steals as well. John, 15 points and 5 assists. Mitchell, 13. Ashton Langford, by the way, 12 points, 8 assists, and 7 steals.
Yeah, overexcited triple double watch on the commentary. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
it was triple double watch in the first half, and then he
yeah,
didn't really
fake
add
triple
to it in the
double.
second.
Yeah, fake triple double watch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whelan, 31 points, 10 of 19 shooting, 5 assists. Barnes was 6 of 6 from the floor for 16 points, and Onwas had 14.
Almost
Uh,
has been an overlooked figure in their recovery.
mm,
He didn't, he hardly played this season. If you're at how many minutes he's played, but he hardly played. He hardly had any substantive impact at all.
mm,
But there's a reason he's there, and there's a reason it's his third year, and they keep bringing him back.
mm,
You know, and when he plays effectively, and he's connected to the game. He's not just one of 12 sitting on a bench because Kane didn't play in this game. I don't know if he was there, but he wasn't on the court at any point.
no.
So I don't know if they've reduced their import count to 11 or the whatever. If he's gone, but almost for Kane is the difference between mega talented G League scorer and grizzled
Mm,
European pro,
mm,
and the grizzled European pro is more vital to that team at the moment
yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
both ends.
Let's go to Newcastle. Newcastle Eagles 68, Bristol Flyers 86.
I wish I
Obviously,
hadn't actually gone to
uh,
Newcastle.
obviously, Bristol have parted ways with Sheffield. McCormack didn't play in this one. Okoro obviously still out as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
eight
Delpech.
and
So,
Delpesh.
yeah,
Delpesh is out for the year.
yeah, season.
8-2 run for Bristol late in the first quarter had them up 12-9. Eagles not a lot of offense without Okoro at the moment. I think you've already touched on that, Dave, but it's worth reiterating.
There's a lot of things which aren't quite right with them. Firstly, it was nice to see. I've already told him this, so I can get away with this.
Mm.
It's nice to see Chris Dodds have a bring your son and grandson to work day with JP Heron and Chris Curl. You look behind. I mean, obviously, yeah, yeah. I mean, JP's probably a little bit too old to be as,
Yeah, yeah.
but he's got the fresh face. And that's with Chris. I mean, yeah, you can just imagine another Scottish Chris refereeing in this be will be it's a kind of a lineage. And one stops, another one's going to be going for 30 years.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I mean, it's the wrong time, unfortunately, to kind of have a change in the wrong time of the season to be trying to figuring out what you are.
Mm,
And Newcastle's half court offense it hasn't been great all season, but they've figured it out with their spacing. They haven't really got much product. They haven't really got a effective roller to the rim because Darius just picks some pops to the 15-foot line. Delpeche ain't there anymore. Long isn't going to roll, so they've ended up not as much pick and roll dependent as being individual scoring dependent, one-on-one dependent, and then relying on Okoro and James to create advantages. Um, but overall, the half court at times has been pretty stodgy, but it's worked out. Individual players have worked out how they could score. Um, it's gone beyond pretty stodgy. Now, part of this is Pulliam, who is a walk up European point guard.
mm,
We've talked about these point guards in the league before. Um, what it's meant is that the kind of the extra little bits that Newcastle were getting in transition kind of the joy of watching a Coro run, or Knight gets a rebound and he runs, or whatever, and they get out and they play with a little bit of chaos one on one. That's disappeared. Their transition points have stopped up because every time they get a defensive rebound, Pulliam's waiting to be given the ball into the basket.
Mm.
So the first 3 or 4 seconds are dead, and the other team is setting up. Now that's the way that you play in Europe. That's the way that lots of European teams play, to get control, get to your spots, get your sets, because they don't have the necessarily, and I've seen it in my own eyes in the NPL games, they don't have the athleticism that some and the shot making ability that some of the guys we get have.
Mm.
Problem is, when you're playing against that every week, if you're not doing it yourself, you're going to lose out.
Mm.
And particularly when your half court offense is not functioning. Now, I reckon in the first half, in the first quarter in this game, I think Newcastle were probably over 9 from the 3 point line and didn't have an assist.
Mm. Well, I've got a stat on that.
Am I right? I didn't look at the stats.
I say I've got a stat. Nick Burns sent me a stat. Newcastle in the first quarter, no assists and no turnovers,
Yeah,
and we both thought that can't happen very. I've no way of checking it, but it can't happen very often.
yeah.
14 points, no assists, no turnovers.
Yeah, and that's because there's just a lot of dribbling.
Mm.
And unfortunately, they only really have. We talk about creating an advantage, which means getting two people kind of attracted to the ball, so you can pass the ball and move it around to get open. That's where ball movement comes from. You don't get ball movement. No point having ball movement if you've just been guarded one on one and passing it around the perimeter because
Mm.
you're not getting an advantage. Um, Without Okoro and without James in the game, there was no advantage. Newcastle aren't built to throw the ball down low. And I think they probably should throw it down low a little bit more to Darius early on in the game just to get something in the paint. So they're getting no paint touches at all. So it's a lot of Pulliam kind of dribble, 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 pull up jump shots, which he makes enough of, but nobody else is touching the basketball.
Mm.
And there's no pressure on the rim. They're not scoring in the paint. As I say, no assists, no turnovers, no threes. Stagnant basketball,
Mm.
you know. And now there's mitigation. They have mitigation for him because obviously, the Tuesday night and back and getting back at half past 10 on Wednesday night, all that stuff, the games that they've played, etc., are not the games you want to play when you've just lost two of your starting five.
Mm.
So there is some mitigation, but against that, they can't be that game was an absolute double down microcosm of the game against Caledonia the week before, almost entirely the same pattern of scoring, and you can't get beat by 20 on your home court 2 Friday nights in a row.
Yeah, yeah.
That can't happen. And that's, there has to be a little bit, and there has to be a little bit more to that. If it's away from home, everybody sucks it up and walks away. But
Mm.
at home, leaves a bad taste 2 times in a row. So Bristol obviously have a little bit of motivation of their own.
Mm.
If they got blown out in the final, players don't forget that. So and then they got beat 2 weeks ago by Newcastle down in Bristol. In what was kind of a similar game whereby Newcastle beat them by 20.
Mm.
So this kind of stuff is swings and roundabouts, and good teams it's going to happen like that. But more concerning from Newcastle's perspective was their inability to create any form of good look in the half court, and their inability to get in transition at all.
Mm.
You know what I mean? You can't have no assists in the quarter. You can't
Mm.
have no made and no assists and no made threes come together because you're not getting good looks because you're not getting assists. You shoot the ball better
Good
off the
passes. Yeah.
off passes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the reality of it. Sorry, I didn't talk about Bristol. Bristol, similarly, they're without McCormack, without Thomas Edwards, so you can't turn around and without Sheffield, so you can't complain about Okoro and then not mention that as well.
Mm.
They they didn't play a perfect game. I think I'll put it that way, but they played a game where they were invested. Um, the ball moved a little bit better, and in Robinson they had the dominant inside scorer. And it's rare in this league for a big guy to be a weather vane for a team.
Mm.
I think Robinson's a weather vane for that team.
Mm.
If he is impactful early, either primarily scoring the ball in the post or making his three, I think they become a massively different team. He's a big guy. He has something about him, but he hasn't been consistent this year. He's a rookie,
Mm.
um, and I think he's the weather vane for that team, even more so now than Johnson, because Lewis and Johnson and Walsh are all helped by not having Sheffield because they all know they're going to play and they're all in regular rotations and regular minutes and they know it's on them. And then you've got your fourth guard is Samuels to play spot minutes. It's kind of the way it normally works. Three guards in the spot minutes. They are all becoming more consistent in what they're doing. Johnson isn't being the forefront of the team anymore.
Mm,
But in this, watching him up close, they were tight. I was more appreciative of the fact that he was letting some things come to him, and he has to with the other guys. And the other guys are fitting into that. So their team connection is still there. I think it may be addition by subtraction with Sheffield. That's just one game. It may be too early to say. But Sheffield shot a lot of quick threes. If they were going in, great. If they weren't going in, not so good.
mm.
The problem with that is that can lead other guys to want to play the same way.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
he takes these shots, I can take these shots. Particularly Walsh, McCormack, those guys. And then everybody's shooting threes and everybody's missing, and suddenly you're scoring 65 a game.
Mm,
So they have a shot. I mean, I think they're in Scotland this afternoon, aren't they? So
yeah.
that'll be an interesting game because they can put a nail in Caledonia's playoff hopes, I think, if they win that game. I'm not sure how consistent it'll be, but I think a lot of it will be on Robinson.
So you've
Right.
talked all the way through the game. Let me just run through what happened. 11-2 run in the second quarter had it out to 19-30. Pulliam and Knight got Newcastle back into the game, cut it to a point just before halftime, and then Flyers started the second half with a 15-2 run to lead 40-55. Keedy Johnson scored 8 of them. That was basically the decisive run.
Oh yeah, I
And,
mean
and
Newcastle.
you've been calling for Keedy, Dave, to be more
Yeah,
efficient, and I'm sure you were
yeah,
pleased to see him do it.
more aggressive.
Yeah, yeah.
I obviously wasn't pleased to see him do it, but to be honest, it was almost like the invitation was there because Newcastle's half court
Mm,
offense at the beginning of the first quarter and the beginning of the third quarter was diabolical. They got nothing. Um, and I look at it, it's like, well, I'm expecting somebody to step up. If Pulliam is going to be dribbling the basketball, he's got to step up to score the ball when
mm,
they need it. If they're going to give the ball to Knight and then Knight makes some plays or throw the ball inside to Defoe or whatever, but they've got to have something better because the beginning of the third quarter, that game was a 2 or 3 point game, and
mm,
the air just disappeared out the building. And
mm,
it wasn't that they missed shots; they didn't get shots.
mm,
Started long started, and I think long started and might be wrong, but whatever it was, they didn't have James. If they don't have James and they don't have a Koro, then the rest of them, Knight can create his own shot, but it's in certain circumstances he's better off the catch. Than the rest of them are really kind of passing the ball around purposelessly.
mm.
So, I was surprised James didn't come in the game quicker because he was the one who's sure he had 20 points in this game and he showed a little bit of kind of will. The other thing about Newcastle, I'm talking quite a lot about them. Sorry, Bristol, but you guys did what you meant to do. So, see how you do tonight. We'll talk about you tomorrow night after today's game.
Mm,
Um, Sometimes a team takes on the will of its best player.
mm,
Now, Okoro's been the best player, and Okoro's been the most willful player all season. He's made big
mm,
shots all season. In the big games, he showed up, right? And sometimes you can kind of get that feeling because he's doing that, and then everybody else is kind of following, and suddenly Alan Aikens is making plays, and Knight is making plays. You think, oh my God, all these guys, how much will they've got, how much commitment they've got, all this stuff. When in fact it's a bit of an illusion.
mm.
And in fact, when the person who's responsible for it isn't there anymore,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
then everybody else is kind of not quite got that same level of confidence about them to carry themselves in that way. So it's a bit of a wake up call. I mean, Alan Aikens hardly made a shot since the car went down. Um, Ward a bit the same since the GB window. He's in a slump, and James has been the only one who's really shown any type of kind of James and Defoe, obviously Defoe, but James and Defoe are the only ones who really show any type of mentality that I'd like to see. So I want to see. I'm interested to see where they are on Tuesday night.
Mm. Pulliam 7 of 10 for 20 points and 8 rebounds. James 5 of 9 for 20 points. Knight 5 of 9 for 13 points. Those three took half of the shots that Newcastle took. They made 17. The rest of the team was 6 of 28.
Well, that's because the ball's not moving,
Mm,
and I'm afraid Pulliam has to speed up.
mm,
He cannot go at the speed he's going at the moment in this league,
mm,
and he has to get out faster. They have to get out faster. They have to get cheap because people are going to stop running. If everybody's walking, the point guard's walking about the court, everybody else is walking up the court,
mm,
and they're not built for that. So he has to get out there and run. And on top of that, I tell you, if you pick the stats to who dribbled the ball, who's had the most dribbles in the game this season, it will be Pulliam in that game.
mm.
He dribbled the ball, just far too much thinking going on, not enough playing. They got to get out and run and make plays as opposed to thinking about trying to figure out what they're going to do. It was painful to watch at times.
Uh,
Against that, they had no legs as well. I give them
yeah.
that. They had no
Yeah.
legs. They couldn't make a shot. Every shot was short, noticeably. And the legs come not necessarily from playing games, but from the travel and all that stuff that's gone on.
Johnson 17 points, Robinson 16 points. He was 7 of 7 from 2 point range and 0 of 5 from 3. Walsh 13 points. Let's go to Saturday. Surrey 89ers with a little bit of revenge from the cup final, beating Sheffield Sharks 69-65 without Andrew Lawrence and without Hunt as well. Clay came out of the game early as well for Sheffield. Not quite the fireworks of the cup final offensively in the first quarter. It took 8.5 minutes for them both to get to double figures.
Well, statistically, I thought you might have some numbers on this, but how often does it happen that teams have played games in the 60s around a cup final in the hundreds?
Yeah.
I mean, because
Well, this was the I did look up the stat on where the team that loses the cup final plays the team that beat them in the cup final in the very
yeah,
next game.
mm,
It's now 4-1 after this one. They were 3-1 going into this. Obviously, the
yeah.
last team to do it was Leicester Sheffield in 2013 when Sheffield won the
That
trophy
was
final, and then Leicester smashed them in the league on the
Was that a
Wednesday.
foul? Tell me, Rob, was that a foul, Rob? Tell me again, Rob. It was BJ, wasn't it?
It
BJ.
was BJ, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't look that much of a foul to me.
Yeah.
Um, but and yeah, there was a few things in this game which didn't quite sit right. As I say, they played a 60-60 game down there, sorry,
Yeah,
last
they
time.
did a couple of weeks ago.
And
Yeah,
then they played 105 to 100 in the cup final or something like that,
yeah,
90 odd. And then another 60-60 game this week. Um, Sheffield had me. I've been a little bit skeptical. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
unfairly a little bit skeptical. They won 11 games in a row, for Christ's sake. I mean, it doesn't get
Mm,
better than that. But the manner of them winning, this show is all about always projecting forwards, not
mm.
necessarily salivating over the past, unless it's my past, which I'm happy to do. Um, but in relation to the season. And I was never quite certain because partly because of the personnel differences. They had new players they brought in and out, and injuries that were coming back, and because they've not really put together any full kind of 40-minute kind of jobs, apart from maybe the semi-finals against Bristol, where they're really good. But playing with a specific motivation. So I think I said on last week, you can see they won 10 in a row, but I don't see them as a team that's going to win 20 in a row.
Mm,
And after 11 and a half, they
mm.
had me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was sucked in. I was sucked into actually believing, actually, no, this team is really good. And the reason is because it was 3 games in a row whereby their defense had stepped up to a point I didn't think they had it in them.
Mm,
Right. And Reece helps because Reece is obviously all over the ball and a really solid, aggressive guy who wants to play defense, and you can see that. And the game against Cheshire, their defense took over in the second half,
mm,
and the game against Surrey in the cup final, their defense took over in the third quarter. Right.
mm,
So I'm now at that point thinking, right, okay, you guys have got me. I'm on the wagon. I think this is potentially a league winning team. Groves has come back in. They're playing him as a stretch five. You can use Ocherubia for a bully ball five. He's got Reece coming off the bench. He's got energy. He's got talent. He's got all this. All this stuff is there. What could go wrong? And obviously, the moment I thought that,
So let's get there. Sheffield with a
yeah,
flurry of threes and Clay inside. They posted a 19-4 run to lead 20-36. Surrey was shooting 9 of 31 from the floor and 2 of 12 from three at halftime. But then they reeled them in the third
yeah, but
quarter. Sheffield only scored 3 points in 6 minutes. James scored half of Surrey's 14 in that time, and it was 45-47.
yeah. There's a couple of things you mentioned. Clay came out. Atiba did this one foul thing, which nobody else
Yeah.
I know no one does as regularly as him. Which is, if somebody gets a big guy gets a foul, it used to happen to Tuck all the time, and Tuck used to
Mm,
be fine with it. So if someone gets a foul in the first couple of minutes, he doesn't wait for the second one, he pulls them
mm,
out. I don't, I'm not sure. I think it's the first time it's happened with Clay.
mm,
That's what I'll say. And I'm not sure. obviously they have today's game as well, so he's got his eye on that too. So there's minutes balance to do, but I'm not sure that it worked well. I'm not sure I've done it with Clay. I raised my eyebrows when it happened. The reason I say that is because we've talked about Nixon, McGill, and Clay and
Mm,
just how good they are, the three of them, right? By Clay sitting down the rest of the first quarter, he basically didn't play much with Nixon, didn't play much
mm,
with that lineup for the whole first half. So they were in no rhythm because when he comes back in, the bench is in.
mm,
And Reese is playing minutes and Glasgow's playing minutes. So it's a different set of lineups, right? Now, they made some shots, but they basically survived the first half, Sheffield, on their defence because they held them at 26, 9, and 31, as you're saying. But they weren't offensively overly fluent, and they never got that fluency back. Nixon never got into this basketball game. Nixon wasn't in the court at the end. He was 22, 23 minutes. But by taking Clay out so early, um, it changed their rotations. It meant they were hard to guard because Groves came in at the five, and that gave Surrey problems as well. And when Groves is a five, he's a little, he's the second scariest stretch
mm.
five behind Mitchell that we've seen in this league in a long time. Um, and only because he's more of a rookie and kind of doesn't shoot the outrageous ones that Mitchell does,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
which are a little bit scarier. Um, but they never got into any rhythm. And then in the second half, their rhythm just disintegrated. And Ricky had one of those games whereby he wasn't making his outside shot, and then they got frustrated with themselves. And once
Yeah.
they got frustrated with themselves, they got vulnerable.
So Clay was called for a foul away from the ball. He's then called for a technical. So 3:43 to go in the third quarter. That was fouls number 3 and 4, and that
That
came
was
just a
interesting.
few
That
seconds after McGill had got a technical at the other end of the
it's
floor.
interesting that Clay was ticking, and Clay was ticking because, as I say, he wasn't in much of a rhythm in the game,
Mm,
but he was also ticking because he got a second foul call was on the drive, which and Gooden drove to the rim off to his left, and Clay basically blocked it back in his face and under the rim. And the refs, it was about 2 minutes before this, and the ref called what must have been a bump on the initial drive before he got to the block because the block was as clean as you could see. And Clay was ticking. I think McGill might have got the technical on that.
mm,
Because Clay was talking, you could see he was mumbling to himself, he was talking, he was giving it the unbelievable, whatever. So the next time down, Surrey have switched on the screen, and Clay's got Gooden under the rim,
mm,
and Ed's under the rim as well. And unfortunately, Clay is still ticking, and he instead of just going in front of Gooden, which he didn't. If someone is as small as Gooden, you don't need to seal them, right? So what a big guy goes and posts up a little guy. A big guy is trying to seal him, which means he's getting his body into him, getting his arms out. So basically you're pinning the defensive player behind you, so they can't come behind you and seal the ball. Well, you can't really do that with a guy like Cameron Gooden because he's so small. You don't need to seal him. He's not going to reach around. Not reach around there. But Clay's done that, and Clay's got him with not an elbow, but kind of a
off
swinging
arm.
arm
Yeah, yeah.
off arm. Ed's seen that, and it's a good call. It has to, I think it might have even been a little hook to start with, but it was a good call. But Clay's still ticking because the last one he gives it the visual descent
Mm,
immediately, whatever. So suddenly he's on 4,000. He's sat down, and McGill's just got a technical. And at that point, um, Sheffield are just ticking a little bit, and Surrey, bless them. I mean, Mervyn James, he is now consistently been um, a top five scorer
mm,
probably since Christmas in this league. You don't think, he's so comfortable in getting the basketball. You think every time he touches the basketball, you think he's going to find a way to put it in the basket. And he just basically kept them going. And they got enough shots and enough hustle plays, basically. I don't think Sheffield collapsed, but eventually, the Sheffield have had a long period. It's hard to win 11 games. It's
mm,
harder to win 11 games with a cup final in the middle,
mm,
right? It's hard, because of the energy that the cup final takes and the effort and the media and all that stuff and the celebrations and everything, right? Then you can play a nice little celebration game on Wednesday, and then who do you see? Oh, we got to go to the sports park to see the team we beat in the cup 2 weeks ago.
mm,
Oh, Jesus. So I just thought they frayed a little bit. They do have some, I mean, they're at that point whereby they're all healthy and they're that deep that they've got issues.
mm.
So Jeffries didn't really play much in the second half, and Jeffries has been doing his job since he came back. Making threes, getting open, that type of stuff. Reese, obviously, he's playing really well. He really didn't look like he was going to miss a shot in the first half, struggled a bit in the second half, but he's getting some of those minutes. Nixon was restricted in this game. He wasn't feeling it. So Atiba didn't have him in the game at the end.
Mm.
He had McGill in the game instead. So again, that's kind of stuff that you've kind of got to work through when you get to the close games, and they couldn't quite survive this one.
Let's go through the last few plays because it came down to that.
Did
120 to go. McGill misses the three. Anderson with the offensive rebound, but McGill driving to the rim, unable to score.
yeah,
Uh,
he was looking for a foul.
Yeah, he was. 50 seconds to go. Ray misses a three. Ogundengbe with the offensive rebound, but he misses. He misses a putback. He
Has to make it.
has to make it. Yeah.
Easy on him.
27. Yeah, 27 and a half seconds to go. Ray fouls Anderson off the ball. It's only the fourth team foul though, so it's a sideline ball. Timeout. Um, McGill driving to the lane, scoops up again. I think he's looking for a foul rather than
Again, yeah,
on this one.
he had one of those games that I recognized from last year, unfortunately, whereby when his 3-point shot wasn't going, he's so skilled. He can do so many things. He almost gets himself into that mindset where he's not quite sure what it's going to be. You just like to make a play, and so he didn't. Both those drives you're talking about, he didn't attack the rim with the, from my perspective, the definitive certainty that he was going to score. And he hadn't seen the ball go through the rim that much in the game. He hadn't made a three. He's a different player when he's making his three. Um, so yeah, but it's interesting that the interesting thing was he was the guy that Atiba trusted ahead of Nixon, who's been there a
Mm,
lot longer
mm.
at that point.
James with the rebound. He's fouled by Clay. That was his fifth foul, but only the team fourth foul. So
Yeah.
16.7 seconds to go. Timeout. Surrey inbound the ball. Some great ball movement. James down the floor dunks it with 11.1 seconds to go. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe kick that out to Nedas and run
And
some clock.
you're thinking exactly the same as I'm thinking. I think when is a dunk not a good thing? Two things. One, I mean, I mean, really, they got the ball in bounds, and Sheffield did commit a foul up the court, but the ball had gone by the time the foul got there,
Mm,
and the ref didn't call it, which I think would have put somebody they wanted to foul probably on the line. I can't remember who it was. Um, but that once that happened and they were out of position, obviously it was a three on. They'd broken the press. It was a 3-on-2. James does what every scorer does, which is
mm,
massage his average.
mm.
And dunks it. Yeah. It's very difficult to tell a player to turn down a dunk. I mean, at the end of the day, 2 points is 2 points.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The fact was he was so wide open, it would have took him another 3 seconds to catch up with him. But
yeah,
then again, he might have missed the foul shots, so I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
be really critical on that. Make the play, get the crowd going, whatever.
yeah,
But don't celebrate like you've won because you haven't.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So 67-63, timeout, advance the ball. And then when Anderson cuts to the basket and scores almost immediately, I'm thinking, I really wish they'd run a bit more
But
clock,
yeah,
sorry.
that was a nice little play because they ran, I think, Groves off the curl screen and Anderson set the screen, but the two of the Surrey guys, including the Delican, I think, went to Groves quite properly because you take away the three, no problem
Mm,
with that. Anderson slipped immediately. There was a decent challenge at the rim.
mm,
He got the lucky bounce, it went in, and he scored with 2 seconds gone, which is what you need. I was surprised Anderson was in the game. I'll be honest. They've got a lot of shooters. But that's obviously the play they were running. They got Jeffries, Nixon. They could have been in the game at that point. Um, but um, but he made the play, and then the game is on again.
mm. Timeout, advance the ball. Ball's tipped away from Sholovinskas, but a foul was called on
On the inbound.
McGill. Hey?
Yeah, yeah, on the inbound. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 8.4 seconds to go. Sholovinskas at the free throw line. He makes both 69-65, basically wins the game.
credit to him.
Mm,
Young lad again in the game, and this is the thing. He could have put Cameron Gooden in the game at the end there. He didn't. He kept Cholovinskas in the game to receive the basketball, and trusted him to knock down the foul shots, and he did. And that's the type of that play is worth for him. Those shots are worth 5 games of game time.
mm,
You can play 5 games where you play 4 or 5 minutes in the second quarter, and it's great. But being on the line, and he would have been as a kid, he'd have been in that situation. But being on the line against a pro team, against a team that's won 11 in a row, 8 seconds to go, up by two, you knock them down, then that's a pretty decent um, predictor of your potential success going forward.
mm.
You say that was a game, except What happens in that corner in Surrey, Dan?
Yeah. Anderson was open, but
Why is Theo flying across the court to try and block that shot? And then when he's thrown across it once, he's thrown across it.
yeah,
He's putting his hand up again to block it
yeah.
again.
He did block it the second time, but yeah, you're right.
I mean, so we've in that so far in that corner in Surrey, we've had Jamal Kennedy shoot the most ridiculous 3-point shot of all time.
Yeah,
Right? We've had Jaden Dallaire travel and be allowed to shoot the second most ridiculous 3-point shot of all time, down
yeah,
three with 3 seconds to go.
yeah.
Now we've got Theo Denby trying to block a 3-point shot with 3 seconds on the clock when you're up by four.
Mm.
I mean, is there some form of time vortex? Is there some form of swirly basketball sense vortex which
Mm.
disappeared? My eyes just can't,
Mm.
what? Anyway, yeah, the best picture of the whole game was after they did the handshakes and Lloyd circling back around to the referees. He blows his cheeks out. Like, boy, did I feel a little bit of sympathy and empathy at that point.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's probably course correction Sheffield need.
Mm.
Obviously, they got a big game today at Leicester, against Leicester, sorry, at home. But I think that's a course correction they needed because, as I say, it's far easier to have two 10-game winning streaks than to have a 20-game winning streak.
Yeah.
Because you're going to feel that it's weird, but it is.
Mm.
It's particularly mid-season, and particularly with the level of parity in the league. Um, but the reality of this is that what it means is there's an argument that today's game is potentially an elimination
It
decider,
is, yeah. It is, yeah.
you know, because
I
now,
think I think more so for Leicester than Sheffield because Leicester have lost the head to head with Sheffield in if they
yes,
lose.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, there'd be two losses. But then when you look at London, I mean, if Sheffield lose this game today, right, they would have to sweep London
Yeah.
in the last two games,
Yeah.
and by enough, and if they will, if Sheffield lose this game today and go 1-1 against London, then London would have to lose three more games or two
Yeah.
more games than that. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Three more games. That is just not going to happen. It's because London only have 9 games left.
Yeah.
And people, and this is the thing with the league. It's over 9 games. Is it the 19? Are they
I haven't
19?
got the table to hand.
All right. I think 9 games left, and that's the thing with it. The league's over quicker than you think.
Yeah. From here it is. Yeah. So
Yeah,
London are 18-4. So
18. The
yeah.
one is that including yesterday?
I don't know. I'm looking at the
No,
league
it's not because
website.
they were 18-4 before
Wait, I've not
yesterday.
refreshed from. It's just open, so let me refresh. So it must be 19-4
Yeah.
because that London game isn't. There you go. It's on there now. So let's have a look. Yeah, 19-4.
So they've got 9 games. Only got 9 games left.
Yeah.
If and Leicester have a chance on the head to head with London. Sheffield a bit less so because they've lost 2 games to them already.
Yeah.
Um, so Sheffield cannot if Sheffield Leicester cannot lose the game because of what it would do to them with Sheffield. But Sheffield cannot, I don't think, lose a game because of the impact it would have on them with London. They would have to
Yeah.
beat London twice, and then, you know, by either a lot of points or then hope London lost to somebody else as well. And so it
We're
really makes
talking a lot
him,
about a game we're literally
yeah,
about to talk about. So
yeah. So okay,
probably
fair
ought
enough.
to stop at this point. James, 28 points, 12 of 22 shooting and 8 rebounds, plus 14 in 34 minutes. Everyone else was 14 of 45.
Yeah,
Gooden was the only other guy in double figures with 11 points. McGill, 13 points, 5 assists. Groves, 11 points, 11 rebounds, and Reese, 11.
yeah. The minutes for Sheffield were probably a little bit problematic. I think Clay was at 21 minutes. Nixon maybe 24 minutes, something like that. And I get that they've got a game tonight, so you've got to kind of space them out and all of that stuff, and give them and not play them too many. But that can start in close games. That can mess with the rhythm of the team.
Mm.
It's a really tough balance this time of the season because you want to make sure that you're winning the basketball. You have to win the basket. They're all must-win games. It's not like Newcastle or Cheshire whereby they're not really must-win games
Mm.
because they're going to be in somewhere in the playoffs in the middle somewhere. They're going for the teams that are going for the league. It is must-win.
Mm.
But on top of that, you've got to balance the schedule. You've got to balance the players on your team who aren't playing as much, and you've got to figure out who it is that's made us successful and who's helping us be successful. Who are the leaders? Who's the Okoro? Who's the one who when he goes down, we're not gonna,
Mm.
we're gonna be a little bit impacted by, or who's the guy that when he goes down, we're fine, we're not a problem. So it's all a bit messy. But we'll see where they're at to this afternoon. It'll be fun. Fun game this afternoon.
It was a fun game, Dave, although I imagine you were probably 6 cans of Diet Coke in by the time you watched it. Apparently, something else happening at the same time. First time in your lifetime. I assumed you prioritized that over any of the basketball yesterday.
I did. Well, I watched. Yeah, I think it was good, wasn't it?
I didn't see it. I
It
was in
was,
Cheshire. I didn't see it.
oh, it was good. I mean, it was good. It's a weird thing to explain to someone who's not from the Northeast.
Funnily enough, I tried to do it to somebody today because we I was in a group email with a Geordie who, like you, old enough to have never seen
Yeah,
Newcastle win, sort of thing, and sent a rather slightly drunk text email to everybody. And I was trying to explain, but you've got to understand in Newcastle that the heart of the city is the football, and having not won anything for that length of time.
not won anything, not scored a goal at Wembley for
Yeah,
40 years,
yeah, yeah.
46 years. Um, and also there's a number of different things. One is the geography of the area. Yes, there's one team in the city and it's right in the middle of the city.
Mm,
It serves the conurbation, not just I'm south of the river, but I'm still Newcastle Gates or whatever, Washington. The second thing is the geographical of the region, because the region is obviously split by the sea on the west, sea on the east, Northumberland and Scotland on the north, which is basically a wasteland. There's not much up there.
mm,
North Yorkshire in the south, which again there's not much there, and on the west you're over to the Pennines and Cumbria. So it's a very and to get anywhere and to go to all the games, you've got to travel out of there.
mm,
Down
mm,
year one, we did it with the Eagles time
mm,
after time. So it's that level of thing. But ultimately, I'm sorry for going on a bit, but reflect on it as a triumph of a super coach.
mm,
Ultimately,
mm.
I know it's a Carabao Cup, and
Yeah,
Middlesbrough
yeah, yeah,
I get all of that stuff, but they beat the top four teams in the Premier League,
yeah.
and Eddie Howe has my substantial admiration for the manner in which he deals with things. The spirit that that group has amongst it um, reminds me of some of the best teams we had.
Well, he's what, 20, 24, 25 trophies behind Fab now.
Yeah,
He's got a little way
yeah,
to catch up.
26, I think.
26, is it?
25. Maybe we get some of the fat D got 20. Yeah, maybe 25.
Yeah.
But yeah, having that is it's all about the people ultimately, and you see the people who overachieved and the people who bought in. So it's great.
Mm.
So yeah, it was fun.
So let's talk about the basketball. We'll start in Sheffield on Sunday. Sheffield Sharks 77, Leicester Riders 76. Obviously, this was played out in the context of one or two things on social media before and indeed after, and it's hard to look through the rest of it without even not looking through the prism of that.
Thank you. Very, very diplomatically put. For those who don't know, I don't imagine there's many people who are that interested in listening to this and don't know, and don't know what's been going on. Probably my dad and nobody else. Um, at about 11 o'clock, I think it was sometime in the morning yesterday, the chairman of the Super League Basketball tweeted some statistics in relation to a named referee, Edward Ulansky, who happens to be the EuroLeague ref that we have in this country, and implied strongly, in fact, almost stated that he was biased in favour of London as opposed to Sheffield, and quoted some statistics which I'm afraid would make a year seven student blanch at their inadequacy
Mm,
in support of that. What I mean by that is small sample size, lack of
mm,
standard deviation, the fact that some of the games are against each other, which double sets off their stats, all sorts of things. So on what he quoted, it would be appropriate to say without any proper basis at all, casts an aspersion over the integrity of an official and one of our best officials. and an official who's been doing this for certainly in this country over a decade because
mm,
he refed our O2 final in 2015.
mm,
And so I'm guessing Ed was probably around before that as well, probably a couple of years before that as well. So you're talking 12, 13 years. Um, and the first thing is that, it's not it's not what you do.
mm,
You can say, well, we've talked on here for 5 years about calls and issues and refs and rules and all sorts of stuff. And
mm,
everybody's got to mention, but at no point has anybody, and nor will I or you, criticise the integrity of a ref. Maybe we're a bit naive. Obviously, Tim Donaghy went off in the NBA. I get that, but these refs aren't refs. These refs are people doing other jobs.
mm,
These people are people just like you and me, or leaving school as a teacher on a Friday and driving 3 hours to get to Newcastle.
mm,
They're not doing that because they desperately want to see X team win and Y team win.
mm,
Particularly now, of course, that everything is videoed and that clips are so um, easy to obtain that clips can be sent around WhatsApp groups so people can always be assessed. So there's a career path there.
mm,
And so that was demonstrably, in my view, unwise,
mm,
unfortunately, and borderline actionable
mm,
once you get to dealing with the integrity of an official as opposed to anything else. And from what I could see, without any proper foundation,
mm,
certainly without any proper foundation that was given. Okay. Um, so then there's a game. The game gets played,
mm,
and Sheffield win the game, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And they win off the bounce of actually a couple of fairly dubious calls in their favour in the last minute and a half, and we'll get to them in due course. And then um, later that night, about 11 o'clock, I think, so goodness knows what anybody's doing on Twitter at 11 o'clock. It is the best thing I ever did getting off it. I advise everybody on here to get off it.
mm,
It's run by people who I'm afraid are not decent actors in the world at the moment. And just it's just a bad place to be. But anyway, then we get a wordy tweet at 11 o'clock from the same Super League chairman, who previously I've spoken about quite positively, I think, which goes further and decides that as well as calling this referee biased, he's also effectively a racist. Um, and my heart just dropped at that.
mm,
My heart dropped at the first one a little bit because more than anything else, it's not the function of the league chairman to be doing this type of thing, whether he thinks he's supporting his team or not. We've already had the fairly unedifying situation this year whereby the league chairman's pushed through a change in the rules that his own team have benefited from, right? It's quite clear that he has no capability, unfortunately, of separating his rules.
mm,
That's a problem because it creates all sorts of issues moving forwards. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell somebody and defend or quote or judge whether somebody is a racist or not.
mm,
What I will say is I've never had any doubt in the years I've been around British basketball about either the integrity of any official in relation to games or indeed the manner in which I've argued with officials, I always will. We've argued with officials a lot.
mm,
I had a black head coach for 10 years um, and would never have even contemplated what was being suggested.
mm,
That's me. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm just a bit soft. Maybe I see things out of positive glasses. But that's my lived-in experience. It's worth the same as everybody else's.
mm,
So everybody has the right to their opinion. But the ramifications of that opinion coming in from the league,
mm,
because within that tweet, Mr. Millett says that unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity to choose the officials or something like that.
mm,
Well, sorry, but in what league should the chairman of any club choose the officials? That's just nonsense. Um, but it suggests very much by saying that he is talking as a member of the league. not as a club. And as a lawyer, um, unless that comment can be justified, it is um, almost certainly libelous, libel 101. Um, it's a defamatory statement, which is going to seriously impact the reputation of the individual in question,
Mm,
and it's made publicly.
mm,
And so that then sets the league up for all sorts of potential ramifications. And then you add up the fact that they're currently in a standoff with the PBF in relation to the license.
mm,
And the BBF's opinion appears to be, well, it's inappropriate for the clubs to be running their own league.
mm,
Well, this is a way to make an argument for them, I'm afraid.
mm,
I hate to say that because I'm very much on side of the owners, but I think the reality is now that just as Chris Grant's position is untenable, I'm quite Vaughan Millett can continue to run Sheffield. He's put the money in, he's put a lot of work into this league, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. But he can't now be effectively seen as an independent arbiter of league issues when you've come up with something so partial, so potentially damaging, and potentially divisive.
mm,
Then I'm not making a judgment on the truth of it.
mm,
I'm not because I can't. 'Cause I don't know that. I don't know if it's come from him. I don't know if it's come from somebody else within the organization. Um, but it's just crackers. I can't contemplate. I can't think anything like this has ever happened before, Dan.
no.
I, I don't think anything's ever
My
been
my
before.
issue is my,
Sorry,
my,
go on.
my issue is I never like to see clubs or club officials or even coaches, to be honest with you. I almost let players apart a little bit on social media, but I'm not a big fan of it, of calling things out like that, of calling out, uh, you know, anything, arguing against each other. I don't like to see the clubs doing that or
Yeah,
the
I agree.
or people doing that. I just don't think it's appropriate. I get maybe it's I'm a bit old and whatever, not, and that's the medium that people use now. But I'm never a big fan of it. But I don't see what the benefit will be. But I do see the challenges that it will raise because we only have so many referees in the country. I'm sure they will all be affected by this, and there will be ramifications from them coming back, and that's my worry about it all.
I think maybe more than affected. My guess is offended.
Mm,
Now, obviously, refs aren't homogenous. They're not a homogenous group. They're not just, you can't don't speak for one ref. You don't speak for all of them.
mm,
They all have their own opinions on things. Um, but generally, the dividing line is always, you can call us what you want.
mm,
You can call us wrong, but don't call us cheats.
mm,
I don't call any of us cheats because they all work with each other, and certainly don't go beyond that and say, well, yeah, and you're a cheat because of this,
mm,
because you don't like the fact that my coach is black. Um, because that's you got to stand up and justify that in some way.
mm,
Um, not just throw it out there. I just find it incredibly depressing.
mm,
The level of the ability of this sport to shoot itself in the foot.
mm,
Um, the you know this is where I think the product on the court is professional.
mm,
I think I've said it before many times. Everybody in the gym and from the refs to the announcers to the players to the coaches are professional, work bloody hard and are underpaid because we don't have the financial capitalization and stabilization in this country for the sport. I absolutely believe that. I don't believe the governance is professional. And I don't believe, every you wouldn't have Richard Masters from the Premier League coming out with something like this.
mm, mm,
Or any of the chair people. There are ways that you do things. There are communication. Wife's a communications professional. You have communications officers who will vet things that are said. who will make sure that you're not. And when you and the problem is when you purport to speak on behalf of others, you have to have you have to be very careful that you have the agreement of others.
Mm,
And what you can't choose is to take one hat off and put another hat on and then keep swapping hats.
mm,
It's a degree of responsibility that comes with the guardianship and the governance of the game in this country. And I'm afraid 80% of the players in our league are black.
mm,
You know, there was, I think, a suggestion of outlandish calls made to try and wind up the coach in the Surrey game. We've already just talked about that.
mm.
Donovan Clay caught Cameron Gooden with an arm. The suggestion that um well, anyway, I'm not. I can't go any further than that. I never contemplated something like that. Refs are wrong all the time.
Mm,
Not as wrong as players and coaches generally, but they're wrong all the time.
mm,
The minute that you start to impugn their integrity and their motivations, you lose me. I'm done. I'm gone. I'm done with that. Um, no matter how competitive you are, no matter how wronged you feel, um, send your videos in, send your clips in, send your calls in, whatever. Um, but no, sorry, no.
So, as I said a few minutes ago, it was a fun
Mm.
game. Let's talk through the action on the court. Sheffield a 6-0 run in the first quarter, led by 5. They kind of kept that advantage, and then Wright hit some threes. Hunter and Abercrombie too. And Dooku getting some minutes in the second quarter, and Leicester got it back down, even led momentarily before halftime.
Yeah, it's a bit surprised with Nduku's minutes because we basically haven't seen him even in kind of
Mm,
end of game kind of garbage time,
mm, mm,
And they had the full lineup, so they had Brooks to come in and play those minutes. I thought, to be fair, it was a bit hard on him. He struggled a little bit. Obviously, Clay picked him out a couple of times and attacked him, and
mm,
Clay's going to go past more experience and better defenders than Dooku, but he must have been showing something in practice.
mm. I think he had
Um,
20 at Hemel the night before.
did he all right? So
Yeah,
he's
I
playing
think
with a
so.
bit of
Yeah,
confidence, and
yeah, yeah,
Rob thinks maybe it's worth rolling the dice. Well,
yeah,
fair enough. We complain when these players don't play.
yeah.
Can't complain when they do, but it's a tough game to kind of to come into at that point. Yeah, I mean, Thompson started off again very, very well, I
Mm,
thought. Interestingly, Sheffield went with Groves in the starting lineup ahead of
mm,
Ratina. So they
mm,
changed that around a little bit. Groves gives them a little bit more variation, a little bit kind of more scoring punch, a little bit more size at that position. Um, I don't know if that was to maybe match it with Abercrombie, maybe, I'm not sure. But I thought that might be the way they keep going forward. But there really wasn't much in the game. I'm constantly impressed with Leicester's competitiveness.
mm,
They just don't beat themselves and they don't make mistakes. And obviously, we know Sheffield's talent level is really solid,
mm.
really high.
Thompson was really good at the start of the third quarter as well. And then McGill had back-to-back threes. Leicester the next 9 points after that to 52-58. The league briefly got to 8 early in the fourth quarter, but then Clay scores. Nixon made a three, 69-70 midway through the fourth quarter. Thompson put Leicester up 4 with 2 minutes to play. We'll just go through the last few
He's
plays
done
to
that.
see.
I mean, Thompson made probably the most ridiculous shot of the season at one point. He made a fadeaway, like 18-footer.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, yeah.
guys, gee, I mean, crazy. Ocherobia played in this game, played quite well. Played really gave Sheffield some good minutes, and Clay is rapidly becoming, the most important guy. He's the go-to guy. But yeah,
Mm.
let's go through the end.
123 to go. Nixon draws a foul from Abercrombie. Two free throws, 73-75. And then 110 to go. Thompson called for a moving
Well,
screen.
hang on a second. You missed one
Yeah.
before that. Before that, there's a play on the curl. Before the Abercrombie foul was called. Abercrombie curls, he attacks the rim, and Thompson is kind of wrestling with Clay, and Clay comes over to help, and Clay clearly reaches down and hits him on the arm, maybe even the top of the arm on the shoulder, and the refs blow the call. Just don't call it. It is you watch it, it's a clear foul, and that means that obviously it's not two shots for Abercrombie, but also Sheffield get to attack a little bit in transition, albeit they do slow down. And then I'm afraid, the call on Abercrombie at the far end, I wasn't impressed with either.
Mm.
Because Nixon steps through, he's got nowhere to go. Abercrombie kind of puts his hand out to the left, hand out to the side, but then he raises his hand up.
Mm.
And I didn't think that was a foul either. And it's the first time I've seen Riley Abercrombie all season noticeably frustrated with the refs. He's actually in another world with another ref. He could have got a technical because he did that. He kind of
Yeah,
gave
yeah,
him the arm, and he was talking about the call at the other end.
yeah.
And I thought they blew, they blew two calls.
I
Quite
wasn't
ironically,
100% sure he was even shooting in
he's certainly
that particular.
stepping through. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might not
Whether
be.
he was, I thought he was trying to lob it over, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's kind of picked the ball up, so I think the refs probably have to assume that he's shooting at that
mm,
point. Um, but I didn't think it was a foul. Um, Quite ironic, really, in the
mm.
midst of things to come, that those two calls really turned the game.
And it's 73-75, and then Thompson is called for a moving screen with 1 minute 10 to go on the next play, so Sheffield get the ball back.
Yeah, I watched that back a few times. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. He moves his arm, but his screen is fine. Nixon sells it well, comes off it. Thompson kind of moves his arm out, and I couldn't figure out what he meant. So it's really hard for the refs in real time. I
Mm,
couldn't figure out whether he pushed his arm out after Nixon had hit him, or whether it's as Nixon hits him, he kind of edges him out of the way.
mm,
Whichever way it was, Nixon sells it well. It's one of those ones where you're not sure if the ref is calling what he sees or what the reaction is. We've seen
mm.
that a few times recently. So that was a 50-50 call, I thought. Maybe, in that time of the game, given the amount of physicality that there was going on, maybe you could let that go as well.
Mm. 55.8 seconds to go. Clay gets to the rim for the dunk, 75-75.
Yeah, he did a good job in that play because Clay came down and he dribbled. Clay's one of the few big guys who will go into dribble handoffs
Mm.
himself. So
Yeah,
he gets
yeah,
to the top, whereby mostly it's the guards who are the bigs are basically handing the ball off at the top of the key, but it's all hand up. It's not real dribble handoff. Well, he dribble handed off or faked the dribble handoff with McGill, which meant that Thompson switched off him, and I think Johnson was left on Clay. Well, that
yeah,
was the mismatch.
yeah, yeah.
And it was a bad switch, really. But it came about because Clay did something different. It wasn't a guard dribbling handoff to a centre. It was a centre dribble handoff to a guard. And the rest of the Leicester team on the weak side weren't sharp enough, weren't
Yeah,
quick enough to realise that mismatch and make him see somebody else under the rim. So basically, it was Spencer Johnson who's just no match for him.
no, no.
And Donovan Clay getting to the rim made a great play.
Hunter misses a three, and then 17.6 seconds to go. Nixon to the rim, high off the glass because he's got Thompson there trying to block it. It was a great finish, 77-75.
Yeah, Thompson was a step slow on that one. Probably went to block it with his wrong hand as well. Um, just a step slow. It was a great play by Nixon. Yeah, he attacked the rim to his right. He doesn't finish at the rim much, but that when it mattered, he did. And that was the momentum was kind of very much in Sheffield's favour at that point.
Timeout, no advance to the ball. Leicester ended up with Johnson sort of fading away. His shot missed. Abercrombie coming from the 3-point line for the putback was fouled by Clay with zero point 0.8 seconds on the clock. Makes the first, second one rattles out, and that's the ball game.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought there were a couple of potential fouls from that position as well. McGill reached round from behind and Johnson lost the ball. So, when somebody reaches round from behind and the ball kind of goes out of their control, that is normally a foul, which wasn't called. Then as Johnson comes across the paint, Clay kind of puts a hand out and there's some marginal contact with his hand as Johnson fades away. Abercrombie makes a great play, crashing the glass. Thompson and Clay are fighting again under the basket. And Clay comes up and, that was a foul.
Mm,
Gets there a little bit late. Abercrombie misses the first one, makes the first one, and the second one is, inches, game of inches, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Millimeters, it was halfway down, comes out, that's the ball game.
Mm,
Big win for Sheffield, keeps
mm,
them interested, certainly keeps them on the tail of London. And of course, they played the night before as well. So, you got to give them credit for turning around within two games within
mm,
24 hours and knocking off those two wins, knocking off the second win, sorry. Um, Leicester have had a few heartbreakers now. I
mm.
think it's pretty fair to say, they don't get blown out by anybody. Um, but they're just at times if they don't if the threes aren't dropping to probably a higher degree than for most teams, they're just struggling to score the ball. It's noticeable that Thompson's shooting the ball more than he was earlier in the season.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not because there's nothing wrong with that. But what that means is that teams are taking away the ball rotation threes that they would otherwise get, and they're staying at home. So
Mm,
it's kind of a scouting job as the season goes on. You
mm,
change the way you guard teams a little bit. So, Sheffield were very much man to man, and you're saying, well, if Thompson makes all those shots to beat us with a guy like Clay defending him or Robia, we will live with that.
mm,
And, so they need Johnson, Abercrombie to make shots, I think, to get over that level with everybody else. But they're still, I think they're a really fun team to watch, Leicester, because they compete and they're smart and they're feisty. They're just a little bit short. Ultimately they're running out a kid who hasn't played all season in the second quarter in a massive game.
mm,
So they're losing Bowman hurt them a little bit for their depth. He didn't produce in every game, but he was there and he was always someone who you never know might go off. I think
mm,
that's hurt them down the stretch. Also, the reality is, financially, they haven't been able to replace anybody. They haven't been able to add anybody.
mm,
And the teams that are Sheffield, London, Manchester now, even Caledonia, who are demonstrating a little more strength, they're the teams who have been in a position whereby they've been able to adjust and accentuate their squad over the course of the season.
mm,
And it's hard because every time you get a new player, it's like in football used to be, when you'd sign a new player in March and you give everybody a boost and all those
yeah, yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Um, in basketball, you're going through you can build, yeah, you build the continuity and you build the camaraderie with the team. But if you add one more piece or you
Mm,
improve one more piece, it just keeps everybody. Caledonia, no, 12, too many.
yeah.
But Sheffield getting McGill when Chapman went down, then getting Reese, who's giving them something as well.
Mm,
London with adding, Holloway at this point and upgrading on flood effectively, and adding Stuckman halfway through the season as well.
mm,
Those things improve you, and that makes the players play a little bit harder, and it doesn't become as wearisome throughout the season as everybody's playing the same minutes. So, they're the overachieving team at the moment. Sheffield have a shot. They've got a
mm,
chance.
yeah.
If
Uh,
we ever play any more games, or if anybody ever agrees to ref them ever again.
Nixon with 20 points, Clay 8 of 12 for 17 points, McGill 13 points and 7 assists, Thompson 8 for 11 for 16 points and 9 rebounds, Wright 13, Hunter and Shilton both had 12. Caledonia Gladiators 68, Bristol Flyers 57. McCormack was back for Caledonia. Louis, Walsh, and Johnson were starting. I meant to check whether that had happened before. I was trying to think to have all three of them started before.
So
Uh,
yeah, I get Louis Walsh. Yeah, very good.
Louis Walsh, there we
Yeah,
go.
Louis Walsh
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
online. Yeah, good.
Sadly, this one wasn't on Synergy by the time I got home last night, so I wasn't able to watch it at 4 times speed or just watch the field goals, which probably would have took about
3 minutes.
yeah, yeah, not very long. Um,
I didn't. I ended up watching the Sky Sports News bit of the 9:30
yeah,
views of the Carabao Cup. So I didn't watch this until about an hour and a half ago. Uh,
yeah,
managed to squeeze out of work a bit early. I think I'm glad I stuck with Sky Sports News, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, yeah. So it
Um,
was 6 minutes in, and still neither team had double figures, and it was one field goal each after 6 minutes. It was
it
still,
was what as they describe it, it moved from a tough watch to a chore.
mm,
I'm afraid, and it's kind of because Caledonia are deep and long and athletic, and Johnny has them bought into playing defense, and he's able to rotate different guys in. And Farrell's your third center off the bench, and he's coming in and mashing people,
mm,
and they've got and the various guards that they've got on the wings. So they're built to kind of grind teams down at the moment. They're not a tremendous half-court basketball team. Because Whelan's having to handle a lot more point guard duties when Ramsey's not in.
mm,
Basically, Whelan's the next guy because they're not Ventura's not really handling the basketball. He's playing off the ball. So that's making Whelan work very hard, and it's making them work very, very hard for their offense. And then the reality is when you play 10 guys or 11 guys, it's harder for players to get offensive rhythm.
mm,
So that's why. So they play hard defensively, but not so good offensively. Bristol are players down as far as they've lost Sheffield, who was their kind of X factor guy who could go for 30 or might not. But they don't necessarily have the size that Caledonia have. So Barnes is a big 6'9",
Mm.
Robinson maybe 6'6". So Robinson struggling to score the ball on Barnes. Caledonia have all this length on the wings, so that means it's hard for Johnston and Walsh to get to the rim. So basically, what it becomes is a bit of a brick fest.
Yeah, yeah.
Wasn't much in the way of creation of good shots.
Mm.
That was the problem. It wasn't that they didn't make good shots. There weren't that many good shots which were being created.
So the Flyers were up 12-19. This was early in the second quarter.
Mhm.
Spielman and Ali Hodgic combined for an 11-3 run to make it 23-22. 3:20 to go in the quarter, and Lewis commits a foul diving on the floor and gets a cut above his eye, and he never returns to the game. So that didn't help Bristol in terms of their depth that you were just talking about there. Flyers then 10 in a row to lead 23-32. Glasgow, oh, throwback there.
Yeah.
Caledonia
Yeah.
9 in a row around halftime to make it 32-32 in the third quarter.
Hang on, who was no, it was Louis not the point guard at the end of the second quarter?
Lewis, not
Oh,
Louis.
Rashad, I was going to
Yeah,
say, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
Lewis.
think I didn't realize that. I didn't realize he didn't come back in. No,
Mm,
because I had that moment. I had that moment that really pees me off with any professional point guard who goes 3 seconds too early and gives up a dunk at the other end at the end of
yeah,
the
yeah,
first half.
yeah, yeah.
Elaine Louis, he actually slowed them down. He held the ball, and then he goes at like 8 seconds, puts a shot with 5 seconds, and the
Mm,
half finishes with total Fagbendley on shooting, making the dunk at the other end, and it's just brutal.
mm,
Clock management, time management. That's the guy you've signed to run it for you. And they always go too early.
mm,
They always go too early. Fletch, I used to have to get on Fletch because Fletch used to go too bloody early,
mm,
because they see an opportunity. Now, the problem is when they see an opportunity, the rest of the team is figured out that we are going to get the last shot.
mm.
So the rest of the team is either rebounding or watching. They ain't running back.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you're running back, it's the first two steps. If you don't get the first two steps in, you're dead. So
Mm,
Louis went too early. They got a rebound. Suddenly Caledonia got 4 seconds. Bang, it's layup at the other end. 4 point swing.
mm,
Absolutely destroys you as a coach.
mm.
Destroys you.
And then from the middle of the third quarter to 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, Caledonia went on a 17-2 run to lead 56 40. It could have been better. Ventura with the three on the buzzer. By the time I finished this, the game was on Synergy. So well done, whoever did all the
Mm.
marking on Synergy to get it up that quick.
All the
Uh,
missed shots, yeah, certainly.
yeah, so I went back and I did this at quarter speed and then went frame to frame to see whether that three was off because Ventura was convinced it was.
I got it to point one, and it was
Yeah,
honest at point one.
I managed to move from one frame to the next, and at point one it's in his hand, and on the next frame the clock is 0 and it's out of his hand. So
See,
it's somewhere in between the two frames is
yeah,
what you need to see as to where does it go to 0 and where is it in his hands. So it's a base, and it's a little bit blurry, so it's hard to tell.
yeah,
Too close to call was my
yeah. Well, yeah, that's
umpire's decision. But
umpire's call. Yeah,
Ian McDonald
absolutely.
is right to wave that.
Hell
It
of a
was
shot,
very,
though.
very close. A hell of a shot. Yeah,
Yeah, hell of a
yeah,
shot, and you're right, very, very, very close. Because the other thing was he got it out of his hands in a funny way because he knew how
yeah,
to. His chest
yeah,
passed it up there, which I
yeah.
think. But yeah, I got it to point one that was still in his fingers, and kind of if it's still in your fingers at point one, I think it's probably a fair assumption it's still there at zero. I don't know.
They did get it to 6 in the last 2 minutes, but they missed a couple of shots to make it less. And then eventually Spielman offensive rebound and putback made it
Well,
65-57.
the whole fourth quarter offense was Leslie Smith and Pasquale Landolfi,
Mm,
who made 5 threes between them,
mm,
and the rest of Bristol was kind of playing on at that point. They were playing on fumes basically. Just couldn't make anything. Evan Walsh missed a chip. Evan Walsh, they were down 6. Evan Walsh missed a chippy under the rim, which kind of reversed chippy, which he was annoyed with himself at. Keedy Johnson, I think, missed a 3. Then Keedy Johnson um, missed a 15-footer. And at that point, they just weren't going to score enough.
mm, mm.
They needed to keep scoring, and it's what we say, isn't it? A 16-point lead in a 50 to 35 game in the fourth quarter is pretty much insurmountable.
Yeah, yeah. Spielman 17 points, Barnes 15 points and 8 rebounds. They shot 38%. They were 6 of 25 from three, but they'd started 1 of 15, so I guess that's pretty
Yeah.
good in the end. Smith with 12, Lewis with 10, and Walsh with 10 points and 8 rebounds. I think we're at the 2 hour mark, Dave. That's my guess here.
Okay, right, no.
Cheshire Phoenix 80,
Well, that's
Manchester Basketball 87. A lot of games this week.
yeah, and stuff.
Manchester getting to the line a bit. Ben going to the bench a little bit early as well, rotating in, and Manchester led 8:15 after 6 minutes.
A little bit early after a
Mm,
minute. I
mm,
mean, that is like, oh. And then two. Well, Skylar, I couldn't work out what Larry did to get taken out. Skylar chucked up two pretty bad threes, to be
mm,
honest.
mm.
Um, three. One, the second one was kind of a step back on the wing with his left to his left, which even for Skylar was not a good shot. I don't think Ben was overly impressed with that. Um, but Cheshire are kind of in that mode where they're trying to they're playing kind of chaotically. That they're trying to find something that works and trying to find a bit of rhythm. But you don't look at them and think who's it going to be. Apart from Austin, who's being consistent, you don't look at any of the rest of them and think it's his. He's the linchpin of this team. That's kind of the problem. Um, Manchester are playing confidently, but and moving the ball well, but in this game they could not make a shot.
No.
So I mean, the shooting again. This I think what was it in the total 9 of 60 or something for threes. These two teams put together 9 of 55.
They
Ridiculous.
were 5 of 20 and 4 of 30, so 9 of 50.
9 of 50.
Mm,
Ouch.
mm,
On the friendliest rims in the league.
mm.
Wow. That kind of says it all. Really, it's a make or miss kind of
Yeah,
situation,
yeah, yeah.
and both teams missed a lot. And I don't think certainly Manchester, Mandalay was happy because they were getting good shots.
Mm.
John was getting good shots. Ashley Longford was getting good shots. I thought Manchester were playing a little bit happy. They won 3 or 4 in a row. So maybe their
Yeah,
shot selection Mitchell came out chucking a bit. Their shot selection maybe was a little bit overconfident,
yeah. Mm.
which tends to happen when that happens. Um, so yeah,
We talk
but
about all the missed threes, but actually it was 4 point play from Rock and then threes from Timberlake and White that got Cheshire back into the game and indeed in front 30-28. They were 4 of 14 at halftime. Manchester were 2 of 21 at halftime. So I guess they at least slowed down the attempts in the second half, Manchester.
yeah, well, I think ultimately there is a time whereby there are other options, I suppose.
Mm,
Also, it's indicative though of the way teams are defending because the quality. I said it earlier on in this season multiple times. That It's the quality of the 3-point defense is a massive, massive determiner of victories and losses in this league.
mm,
Can you defend without fouling? And that's one thing I wanted to say. I know we've been gone 2 hours, but some of the younger refs are struggling a little bit with this 3-point foul. There's really three, I think, 3 or 4 this week where the offensive player is kicking out
mm,
as the defensive player is going past. And if the contact is in the air, then in reality, the defensive player is going to be making contact with the offensive player's body, not with their legs.
mm,
Their legs are meant to be underneath them.
mm,
So if their legs are out in front of them and their legs are making contact with the legs, that's probably because an offensive player is kicking out. And I'm not seeing that call enough. It needs to be made more, and the refs need to be a little bit wiser to it. There was certainly one in the Newcastle game. There was certainly one in this game. There was
mm,
a couple in a couple of other games as well. Um, but how you defend the 3-point line is so important, and particularly with Cheshire on because Cheshire's style's changed a little bit. Um, Austin's having a lot of the ball. They don't generate as many 3-point shots when Austin has the ball as when Holden has the ball. But when Holden has the ball, they're kind of teams are kind of now aware that the ball's gonna be wanged cross court,
mm,
and teams are staying at home and giving up that three. So it's a way the defense has kind of adapts over the season as you see teams multiple times, um, which means that they're then playing more with Scott Grayson and Austin as initiators who are both looking to get to the rim. Nice dunk by Scott Grayson, by the way.
Yeah,
Not a
wow.
bad one by FJ at the other end either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no, they just you don't get the feeling that Cheshire have that kind of extra degree of togetherness that they need just to get to the next, just to get over the hump in a couple of these games.
Mm,
Either you do feel there's a few of them marching to the beat of their own drum a little bit. And
Mm,
I think at this point of the season that is tough. They've got the talent to get there, but it's not there's no easy wins now.
mm,
And their scoring is kind of slowing down. Manchester just keep on going. They're having the new coach bounce. They probably do need Kyle back now.
mm,
Probably either had that bounce now. Probably need that extra guy back.
mm.
And FJ played better in this game. He didn't foul.
Yeah, yeah.
I need to agree.
It was pretty even throughout last 3 minutes. It went from 74-73. Manchester scored 7 free throws in a row to move 6 points ahead, and that was basically it.
And that's what we
Mid-switch.
talk about, isn't it? End of game. Some of those foul shots weren't on drives, I don't think. I might be wrong. But they couldn't let Cheshire struggle to defend without fouling at the key points of the game. Manchester have also struggled to defend without fouling. Um, but they did a slightly better job of it here than
Mm.
Cheshire did.
Holden 16 points, 9 rebounds. Timberlake 16 points. Austin 15 points. 28 of 80 they were from the floor. 5 of 20, as I say, from three. Mitchell 16 points, 1 for 10 field goal shooting, but a perfect 13 of 13. DeBose 14 points and 10 rebounds. Ashton Langford, Faj, and John all had 13 points and 4 of 30, as I said, but 27 of 32 from the free throw line.
Free throws kill you. You've got to defend without fouling.
Mm,
And it isn't, it's not the ref. I'm going to go back in favor of the refs again. It's not the refs. Ultimately, if teams are giving up these amount of foul shots every game, it's because of the way that they're defending.
mm.
You've got to do the hard yards.
So Dave needs to get back on the cans, and I've got a date with Dicey Riley. So let's run through the table quickly. London 19-4. Sheffield have now qualified for the playoffs as well at 16-5. Leicester 14-6. Newcastle 10-11. Manchester rising up to 9-13. Cheshire 9-14. Surrey 7-12. Bristol 6-12, and Caledonia 4-17.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've not nothing more to say. We've done
Yeah,
2 hours of this nonsense.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
slightly depressed.
yeah. Well,
Like,
as I say, I've got some traditional Irish music to cheer me up on St. Patrick's Day, so I'm off to do
let's go have a Kaylee.
that. On that note, we'll see you next week, people. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.